Morning, Commissioners meeting Wednesday, January 15th. All three commissioners are present. We start off with public comment. My understanding, there is no public comment at this point. I will move on to elected officials and department head updates. And I will start with Doug because I know he's there someplace. We can't see him yet. Doug, do you have anything for us?
I do have an update and then a question of when you want to cover the budget related items. And I have an interview at 10 a.m. So I am hoping we can fit that in prior to 10.
I think we can do all of that now. We may have to go into we discuss financials, but we can go from there and talk about the other things first and foremost. So why don't you start and give you an update and then go right into the other items.
Okay. The update is I'll put my camera on. The update is that last week we were notified after nearly 2-year process of trying to become accredited with the National Commission of Correctional Healthcare that we received full accreditation. And that was a very big accomplishment, something I'm feeling very good about. We will be sending in a press release to kind of have that recognition for that. It's a 2-year accreditation, and although it's not a required thing, it is just something that we have a lot of reasons to feel good about in terms of the confidence that we're managing the healthcare needs of the inmates, which are increasingly more challenging for the new commissioners. That's been a theme in the last couple of years, as we're seeing many more complicated and both chronic and acute medical issues, which are really challenging to manage in a jail. But knowing that we're meeting these nationally recognized standards gives me a lot of confidence. So that's the announcement.
Can you just talk a little bit about the process of what you guys had to do to meet this accreditation?
Yeah, so it started nearly 2 years ago, and it involved approximately 250 total standards. Okay, we had an initial review on paper and virtually, and then they did an on-site visit. They looked at medical records, they talked to inmates, they talked to staff, they talked to nursing staff and corrections. We were about 80 to 85% compliant at that initial point over about a year ago, maybe a little over. And we began to make some corrections. Some of those were more in the background, just being able to document with policies some practices that were happening were now shown to be the case on paper. And some of them involved changes, particularly in the way we do screenings and the level of communication that it takes to do that well between correctional officers who, from the first moment an inmate arrives, they do begin to screen for potential health, both medical and mental health concerns, and how we collaborate and work together with the nursing staff in that shared process, needing to kind of tighten some of those things up. And then the other one I'll just mention that was fairly significant is we used to pull the medications down in the medical office and then go down in a cart to the unit, it wasn't acceptable to pre-pull those medications. They have to be pulled one at a time as each inmate comes up to the cart. And so we had to rearrange the procedure for med pass to be happening on and having those meds pulled on the housing units, which was a pretty significant change, both for the nurses and for the correctional staff who need to supervise that process.
Questions? Congratulations, nice job, and please tell those that did the work that we thank them for doing it. My understanding, we are the only county corrections facility in the state that has this accreditation, correct?
To my knowledge, yeah.
So. And on a side note, it doesn't hurt, in this day and age, and if you look at Valley Street over in Manchester, you're always hearing about lawsuits. And it doesn't hurt that we have some level of accreditation that we've gone through to make sure our standards are at the highest level. So that, for our risk and liability issues when they occur, we do have some processes to stay by, aside from all the other policies that Doug has in place currently. So it's a nice thing that to have on many levels.
This was a higher level accreditation than the one we already had before that most DOCs have in the state. Is that right? Wasn't there?
Doug, did you hear that question?
Wasn't there enough?
We had no other
We did.
accreditation from an outside body for our medical services prior to this. I mean, we operate off of ACA, American Correctional Academy standards as a general rule. We try to be in compliance, which are broader than just healthcare services within corrections. But we're not actually ACA accredited per se. So this was the first, formal outside or third party accreditation that we have.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing that, Doug, you want to continue?
So yeah, the next topics are some budget shifts from some items as they sat on the commissioner's recommended budget from a month or more, and some things Chris and Cheryl and I have, I think, agreed make some sense, and we want to seek your approval before I would go to the executive committee, at least on a couple of them. The first one is that we had a need to replace one of two hot water storage tanks. Initially, it didn't appear we had the money to do that this year. But I proposed shifting some money that had been approved on your budget, $66,000 for updating the control system that operates the HVAC. But what happened in the last couple months is that Les, our maintenance director, Les Bogar is his name again for the new commissioners, and the assistant Cody, they've had a couple months of manually working with that control system. And what they found is they're getting better at it as the temperature fluctuates, both in terms of making it efficient for them in their amount of time, and compared to the same 2 months in 2024, they were able to save about 28% of the electrical usage, power usage, and that came to a total of about $30,000 year to year for a 2-month period. And they're now at this point comfortable with suspending that idea of the control systems project completely. And so we want to move that money over to the hot water tank replacement, along with 80,000 that had been approved in the commissioner's budget to be set aside in reserve. And that total will allow us to do that higher priority project. So that's number one. I don't know if anybody has any questions on that.
So simply put, when we went into this, we had multiple options that as we went in deeper dive into the process of looking at what we could do, it came clear that we couldn't just, we were gonna spend a bunch of money, about $80,000 to either fix on a temporary basis, and what we were being told is that fix could last a year, it could last 3 years, and then we put more money into getting new tanks. So what we realized is that we might as well move forward with purchasing the full tank now, because it does take a period of time to get that tank in. And then second would be that, and the other tank can continue on, but both tanks will continue on until that they're in. And then next year we can take a look at the second tank if needed, and that would be Doug's call, moving forward. And the tank though, initial costs, the purchase of the tank is one cost, and then the actually putting in the tank itself is the second cost. So if we took that's the money that's already been appropriated by you, and just moved it over, then we would be within the framework of being able to do that tank this year. And that's much more important in the scheme of things than the controls, as you heard.
So the controls, not replacing the controls, was already money that was allocated, the
Correct, in the
66.
budget, 66,000.
And then the new tank, which was already allocated $80,000
Correct.
was set aside. So between the two pots of money, that new tank is paid for.
Yeah, and so, to be honest with you, our job, when these situations occur, we like to make you aware of it, because we're just really moving money that you've
Right.
already appropriated. But we wouldn't want to go to the executive committee without you being aware of this change, so that we brought it here first.
So the money has already been approved.
No,
The 80,000 is
Not
what
by
we're
that.
waiting for approval on. The 66 is approved.
both monies are in the process of the
Okay.
budget for this coming year.
All right,
So the executive committee will be approving that, and they'll be hearing this story.
We've approved.
right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
We've
the
approved
budget,
it.
budgets, the commissioner's budget is where this money's been approved.
Right. So we're just waiting, so we're not, they've already seen this request. We're just trying to now move it to a different line.
Correct,
That's all.
yeah, in their budget books,
Right,
it was what your budget
Yeah.
was, and now we're just changing it a little bit, but no added money. Okay? Okay. Then
Okay.
let's move on to the next one.
The second one is another shifting of money that what is allocated in the commissioner's current recommended budget. And that's to move it from a superintendent pay line to an area I had recommended in my recommended budget, which was to bump up the pay of the 4 assistant supervisors. And I believe the higher priority in terms of keeping proper equity, internal equity in the structure of corrections is to put that money there. Again, this was agreed in a meeting Friday with Cheryl and Chris and I believe they are supporting it. So it's not any new spending. It's just a reprioritization.
I'll explain a bit further. So in the 2025 budget, Doug presented a personnel request that would have he was requesting a grade change from what is an 8T, which is the grade, the labor levels that the correctional officers on, to a 10T. That's a pretty significant increase. To go from an 8 to a 10 is a $2.73 increase per person. So it was a pretty substantial increase. In the 2024 budget for these same people, he had asked that their supervisor pay, which is a one-time bump up when they actually act in the capacity, when they are no longer just the assistant, but they're actually in the supervisor position, would go from $1 to $2. It was not supported in 2024. It stayed at $1 because that's essentially what the blanket that the rest of the county gets when somebody steps into having to help out in a supervisory role. When this presentation came forward again in 2025, the $2.73 increase was pretty steep for this, and so we said, well, why don't we go to the $2 again? Doug came back to say that he really would advocate that that there is a definite differentiation between what is his other correctional officer threes, is that what it would be, Doug, that are 8Ts?
Yes.
Yeah, for these assistant positions. So when we talked last week, I made a suggestion that even though the correctional facility has never had a labor grade 9T assigned to any of their correctional officers because it never fit in the structure, that perhaps these assistants that need to be somewhere higher than their CO3s, but somewhere lower than the people that are actually 100% time, well, 100% at times in these positions, to look at a 9T structure. And the differentiation between an 18 and 9T is a 70 cent an hour increase, not $2.73. So the 70 cents essentially can, if we were to give these individuals, they wouldn't get the $2 increase. They'd go back to the one at the times that they fully step into the other positions roles because they're on vacation, sick, whatever it might be. But because they are trained, they are supporting these people on a day-to-day basis, that they would get a 70 cent increase. That at least puts them at a different tier than their peers that are doing something a bit lower. It would essentially repurpose the pay increase that was presented for Doug, almost dollar for dollar, so that we would just move it from Doug's line down to the correctional officer line to be able to accommodate that. So it wouldn't be any new money being asked for. It would be just moving the increase that was supported for Doug down to the correctional officer line to make.
I think that's a pretty good substitution, actually. Yeah.
So that's what will be being requested. If you support the adjustment.
Again, money within, moving around
Yeah, yeah.
just to meet the need. So.
Yeah, these
I-
are only positions that are
I have,
open.
so just to add this,
They-
I have had trouble convincing the CO3 group, which is probably about a pool of 20 or so, to take these primary assistant positions for what amounts to $1 an hour only when they're supervising, acting as the officer in charge of the entire facility. It's not a very big incentive compared to the level of responsibility to have the jail oversight, whether it's a weekend, evenings, but when I'm not here and when the primary commander's not there. And that's a greater need, in my view, than to pay the superintendent. Both myself and also believe when it's time for me to leave, there won't be any challenge. There won't be any dearth of applicants, whether commissioners would choose to go outside or internally to fill that position. And so that was my wish, is to repurpose that money to a higher priority within the DOC structure of correctional positions.
Questions? Seeing none, all right, then we're gonna continue, move on, and you bring it to the executive committee. And then you have the bus that you wanna make them aware of too. What your,
Yeah, yeah. So this is one where it's, I think, just making you aware. So we have had a need to replace our transport bus. It's used for the transport of federal inmates. The current bus is on its last legs and has been for a while. In fact, last year in the budget, we set aside $55,000, knowing this significant expense was coming. The current figure is at 158,000. And that has been approved in the current recommended budget, the rest of the money. But the bus is about a 1-year build out to the point we commit to a company to move ahead. And I'm very nervous about this current bus making it this length of time. It's been in the shop repeatedly. And in the short run, we are having paid a number of expenses to keep it up, and there's a risk of paying more. So what Cheryl has suggested I do is I am going to ask the executive committee on February 3rd if they would be willing to let us commit the 55,000 that was set aside already as a down payment a couple months sooner than we would otherwise be able to if we waited until the full delegation approval, and get them started on both two things: locking in the price, which these days prices are constantly changing and they're always going up, but also getting a couple months head start on building that bus just to reduce the risk of kind of short-term expenses in repairs. And so we wanted to make you aware. So again, I'm not going around the commissioners with a request to the executive committee.
and the funding is already there. It's
Oh.
just,
No.
well,
the
the funding's in your budget.
Yeah, it's just been, it's not, it won't be released.
Well, it has to get approved.
Yeah, but so the executive committee has authority to do that before?
We're not certain, and that's where
Okay,
we,
so can't we just use balance money, fund balance money?
We have to make sure that the bottom line, that the executive committee actually wants to move forward with the second half of this monies. That's the first thing. So we need to tell them about the urgency, tell them our plan and see if they agree with that, see if they even agree with funding what you've already put in that budget. And then we could see if they want to do that. Have they ever in the past allowed hiring of staff or something early prior to the budget being approved? I think with Connected Families, they did something one year, but it's really up to them. I mean, it's really their feeling comfortable that they're gonna leave that money in the budget and not pull it out for some reason. So I don't know. He just wants to have this conversation and he wants to make you aware of it and see where it goes. It may fall flat, and it may be that they have to see how the budget process goes out and see how the vote is, and then on April 1, they can move forward.
What are the financial repercussions that the executive committee could be informed of if we keep paying for repairs? How much additional is that gonna add to the budget if they continue to wait
Yeah,
for this thing to happen? Because that's throwing good money after bad. If we are already in a crisis situation with the vehicle breaking down continuously, we are spending repair money versus purchase money as we're waiting.
We told this story last year and told them that we thought we could get by this year, until this year, put some money aside and see if we could meet that need this coming year. So we've done that, and so hopefully they heard that message last year, enough of them that were on their committee last year. but they'll be reminded of what it would mean.
Yeah, because that's a waste of money.
Yeah.
Yeah. And further, and I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, but Commissioner, you're exactly touching on what I'm just trying to advise and recommend if possible, and it may not in the governmental process here. But should we lose the current van to repairs for any length of time, it not only affects the cost of those repairs, but should it take, say, several weeks in the shop, that affects federal revenue. That affects our ability to bring in federal inmates. It would suspend that for a period of time. And so I can't quantify, I can't say for certain that this van, it may limp all the way to the finish line and we may not have more repairs. But if we did, and especially if it took a period of time, it's not only the cost of the repairs that we're throwing away, but there's a risk of revenue that we're going to have a loss from the federal inmate numbers.
And
And
I
I
think,
would make that point to the executive committee as best I can. And as Chris said, it may not be something they're comfortable to do. And if not, we'll keep our fingers crossed and make the best of it.
I think one thing about this particular, obviously it's not insignificant, the amount of this capital project. However, there was already a commitment last year in 2024 to set aside $55,000, knowing that this had to get done this year. So for now, the delegation to derail this and not fund the other half in 2025. I don't see it happening, but it is gonna have to be the comfort level of the executive committee feeling like they can go ahead and authorize an expenditure of such magnitude before the delegation has fully voted on it. But there's a lot of compelling reasons, and like I said, they already funded half of it last year. It's in a reserve. And the budget this year releases that reserve so that we can have that plus the augment the current year budget. So I feel that they're in a safe place to go ahead and allow, but we just don't have that authorization to let them go ahead and do it unless the executive committee feels comfortable.
And how much is the cost of this bus?
158.
158.
Yep.
So we've got a third set aside.
Yeah. Skip.
Well, I understand what we're trying to do, which makes sense if the bus doesn't work. However, does the cost of the bus and the total operating cost, is that paid for by the feds eventually based on what we're charging for? Can you show where that rolls into the budget at all?
It's certainly a return on our investment.
Well, the bus wasn't purchased just for the feds, so were they? Was it initially?
Doug,
I
No,
mean,
It's only used for federal transports. We're talking about moving, it's a 12-seat bus. We
Right.
don't have a need to move that many county inmates at any one time, but they use that at least weekly for transports of federal inmates, both coming to our facility, and we do charge an hourly fee for the staff time to do those transports, plus our per diem daily bed fee for those inmates. We also do some transports for them where we're getting paid just to do transports, but we especially are trying to limit that with the current bus not in good shape. But occasionally we have done transports to just move feds from one facility to another. The money that the revenue in total from the federal inmate program is about 1.4 million a year.
How much of that is profit from? It's not on this census because I assume because it's the beginning of the year,
I would assume it's what it is.
but don't we have generally two lines there showing what the budget is and what the current is? The current is usually at the end of the year, isn't it?
We
Like,
usually make more than what we budget.
it's like
for.
$250,000 or
Yeah.
something like that. or-
Yeah, it depends. I mean, we've been as high as, if we budget for like 1.4, let's just say.
Yeah.
And we've been close to 2 million over the last so many years. And maybe I'm wrong in thinking this, and I know it's fund balance and all that, but when some of the money, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Cheryl, some of the offset money that we're using is coming out of their capital reserve this time. Didn't we take that for the bus?
Yeah, I think, yes, I believe so, yes.
That money, when we build up the capital reserve, a lot of times it's, can we take a portion of that 1.4 million and put it into their capital reserve for moments like this? That's how we build up that capital reserve. And over time, we add a little bit more in, a little bit more in, so it gets up to, you know, my comfort level is about 250,000 is where I'd like it to be. And so technically, when you say, is the federal inmates paying for this? Technically, yes. It's money that we set aside that probably went into the fund balance, but then went back into the capital reserve or whatever, but it's revenue that was generated by the federal inmates coming in.
All right.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Doug, just to kind of stay on the same topic, but a little shift, is there any word on the rate increase that was presented? Because currently we get $105 a day for the federal inmates, and there was a presentation that would have taken it to what?
120, we have submitted a formal proposal to them. And will either be heard on that proposal in February or June. Based on their timeline and whatever, and we don't yet know, so we don't. I guess the worst case is they'll hear us on our request in June. The feedback we're getting through Major McLaughlin and folks he talks with about these kinds of requests is we're very optimistic. But it's not in the budget, you know, it's nothing, of course, we've budgeted. But we haven't had a rate increase since 2010. So that 105 has been 15 years. Nor have we had a rate increase in our hourly transport fee that we also charge them since that same time frame. And we're proposing about a $10 an hour increase, I think it is, on that fee as well.
When I first, and I think when I first started here, and even to more recent in the last few years, we've had the highest rate in the state of New Hampshire. And then all of a sudden, there was a few other that redid theirs, because Stratford County, I think at one point was getting like $85 a day. And so we were getting 105 a day. And then all of a sudden, some other counties, you know, put in to get a higher rate. And I think went to like 108, 112, that area. And so we just, you know, we put it in and we think it's a fair rate and we see what happens and go from there. And it just generates more revenue for us in that corrections facility. And remember, our population's averages about, correct me if I'm wrong, about 100 to 110. Of which probably on a given day locally, anywhere between 50 and 60 are local. And so it doesn't, when we have federal inmates in those facilities, we're not adding an added pod because of classification. They're in one of the classifications. And we're not adding more manpower because there's one or two people in the pods like there would be anyways. So really it comes down to food. And, you know, that is because we're adding more bodies. So it is a nice situation for us, and the superintendent's made it very clearly that, you know, 50 is probably a comfort zone as a high. Though they've gone over it at times, and we'll go from there. Stratford County, they have about 200 some odd, but they're a whole different system. They They actually they get mostly New Hampshire, we get mostly Vermont. And they actually have people at the Rudmanville courthouse that actually are in the court. They pick up the individuals and they take them and they drive them to Stratford County and then they drive, so they're much more embedded into the system in New Hampshire, whereas Vermont really likes our system. It's not that we don't get New Hampshire, we do. We get Rhode Island, we get Massachusetts on occasion, but mostly it's Vermont, and it's Vermont really likes our system. We have a good relationship, I think between the superintendent and Scott McLaughlin, who is a liaison for the federal inmates. They have done a great job working with the US Marshals to develop that relationship over time. There was a time where I would go with them too, and we just would sit down with them, talk to them, say, how are we doing? What are you guys looking for? And they always praise the work that Scott and does to communicate, and also the ability and services of Cheshire DOC. So just a little
I think
history.
the bottom line is we don't have that bus service that are really compromising
No,
a substantial revenue source.
I understand that we need it going, that part. I was just wondering if we were compensated for it.
Oh, yeah. Very well.
So that's where we're at. The only thing that I don't know is when a new administration comes in, if that administration can, one, ask for the resignation of all US Marshals so they can put their own people in. I don't know that. I don't know if it's an appointment. I can't remember what the process is. So I don't know if this is probably the reason why it's a February to June date to try to make those decisions, but their staff doesn't go away, and they have very good staff up in Burlington and Concord. So I'll be quiet now. Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Doug. Is that everything for you today?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, Mark, do you have anything aside from some things I may be talking about that you want to bring forward in reference to EMS? Still can't hear you.
Nope.
You're
Can you hear
muted
me
or
now?
something. No, you're not muted, but,
Can you
Can't
hear me
hear you.
now?
Can you hear us? You want to go away and come back?
He probably just needs to switch mics.
You need to switch mics, click the arrow on your audio thing at the bottom. Switch your mic.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Yeah, sorry, I have like 4 different microphones that came up and I was trying to find the right one. No, I don't have anything pressing. I know, Chris, you and I had talked about a couple of things that we're gonna mention. You can just let me know when you want to discuss those topics.
Well, there's one I want you to mention right away, and that is the email that you received the other day from the lieutenant from Keene. Can you read that email and set it up, then read it and go from there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was very pleased to receive this email. We responded to a call in Harrisville the other day, and it went very well. I was actually in the process of formulating an email to Keene Fire Department to thank them for their service when I received an email from Lieutenant Kinnery. And I'll just read it verbatim here. It says, I would just like to pass along my appreciation to your A5 crew in regards to our RSI medic intercept. Not going to read the address. Ashley and Darren had done an exceptional job stabilizing a highly unstable patient prior to our arrival and worked seamlessly with our crew to prepare for and perform the RSI as well as the post-intubation care. Please pass along my thanks. So
Mark, you have to explain RSI.
yep, an RSI procedure is basically one of the highest levels or highest risk procedures that we as paramedics can take on. Currently, it is a procedure that the only department in the area that can do it is Keene Fire Department. It involves chemically sedating a patient, paralyzing the patient in order to introduce a breathing tube to help a critically ill patient. So oftentimes it was a great job for our crew recognizing that this patient needed that procedure, as well as there are certain things, requirements the patient has to meet in order to have this procedure done. And they did a great job getting that patient up to that criteria so that the procedure could be done safely. So it was definitely a great piece of teamwork and working with Keene Fire Department.
So, and it was in Harrisville.
It was so,
Great.
I also, on that same day, almost at the same time, we also had an additional call where we had to use a multi-town response. This was in Marlborough, involving a patient. We had Marlborough Police Department as well as Dublin Police Department. And I did get an email from Chief Byam of Marlborough Police Department as well. And part of that email is we have enjoyed the positive working relationship with CCMS since its establishment. Feel free to reach out if we can provide support for your operations in the future. And then gave me his personal cell phone number. This was in response to an email that I sent out to him and Dublin Police Department, helping them or thanking them for the help that they provided on that call. It was an extremely combative patient. And thankfully there were no injuries, mostly because of the work that our crews did, as well as the assistance of the local police departments.
So quality of care is right there, and it's without question, and the levels, the skill level is as good as anywhere that you can think of in Cheshire County or the state of New Hampshire. And I think, Chief, you would say that you would put your guys up against anybody in the level of care that they're giving, that the quality of care they're giving is what you say is the gold standard of expectation.
I would absolutely agree with that. I think, more and more we are just, I'm being inundated with thanks and, applause, for our crews and the work that they're doing out in the field. I believe it's about 2 weeks ago now, I had an individual that came into our station who suffered an out of hospital cardiac arrest, where his heart stopped. This happened in the city of Keene. City of Keene responded and were able to revive that patient, get him to Cheshire Medical Center, which is an amazing feat. I think the national average right now is about 8 to 10% survivability of that type of event. Our crews then took this patient, who was in an extremely critical state, all the way up to Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center on a ventilator, multiple medication infusions, etc. And this individual, unannounced, stopped by our station and almost demanded to shake every single person on shift's hand that day, and just couldn't have been happier with the care that he provided and how thankful he was to be able to be neurologically intact. He has absolutely no deficit from this incident. And that was extremely rewarding, and obviously was passed on to all of our crews, not just the crew involved.
And just so you know, I talked to this individual last week, and he had a visit the day before with his cardiologist in Boston. And the cardiologist looked at him and said, listen, just remember this, you should be here right now. You said, everything lined up perfectly for you to survive. You died twice. Your daughter was one of the keys in all this, because she started CPR right away. And then he got there, they were able to then transport him to a hospital where he died again. And he told me this, and the only reason we're having this conversation is because the Sentinel, the Sentinel, I think, is going to do an article on this and about this relationship, that we were able to take him and move him in a very critical state. That any time we could have gone sideways, and get him there as quickly as possible, and then have, and now that was what, November 24th? And here he was in December, talking to us, walking around, just thanking us. He didn't even know the city of Keene came first. We actually told him that the city of Keene got their got there to take you to the hospital, we took you from the hospital, all the steps along is exactly the continuum of care that we've been preaching about, even with the daughter, not that she took CPR, but she knew CPR. And us trying to go into communities and teaching kids and adults CPR, so they have that in the back of their mind, so that situation, that's what we need, is a community level of care. And so it was, it's a great story. So, but this is what we're hearing all the time. And I know that last week, there was an interesting conversation in Harrisville. And at the end of the day, one of the things that I'll be talking about, I know that Mark's on here to listen to, is a little back history of where we came from to where we are today. Because I don't want to overwhelm you with information, so I'm going to give you pieces here and there, but since it was brought up last week. But I will tell you this, one of the things that was brought up, and Mark can talk to this too if he chooses to, is that we take very seriously the support we give to any department head, but especially this department. We actually have individuals, I know that the police chief in Harrisville at one point brought up around, the concern. We, from day one, we have people that meet with Mark on a regular basis to support him outside of myself. Working with Mark, I probably see or talk to Mark 6 or 7 or 8 times a week, sometimes more. And Cheryl on the financial side and Kim on the HR side, it's constantly guiding them through processes. So I believe there is a network that we're always looking to see how we can support. One of the reasons why for his guys, when they came to us and they said they wanted to have initially lieutenants, and now it's shift
Officers.
We jumped at it because we knew that if we didn't do that, then the upper echelon will have to continue to cover, and it's a burn rate on the upper echelon. So that if we have this lower group being able to step up and step into that role, then it just lessens the burden. These are things that we're constantly thinking about, how we can do things better. Mark, I don't know if you want to add anything to it.
Yeah, absolutely. You kind of stole my thunder there. But one thing I definitely wanted to say is I can't tell you what it means, to have the commissioners. I know, Terry, you weren't physically there in Harrisville the other night, but I know you were there on Zoom. And the fact that everywhere I go, that you guys are even physically there to understand what we're doing, what we're trying to do, and support me. I have a ton of support. I have some great people who work, in this building that are extremely knowledgeable, and they have great insight and are always willing to share that with me. I've met with Caitlin McDonald, about budget stuff yesterday to have a more clear understanding of things like that. Chris, I can't tell you enough, the fact that I'm able to text you, and pretty much, thankfully it hasn't been 24 hours a day, but I know I could if I had to, and get immediate responses. I've never had a request for a meeting that was denied. The outside resources that you spoke to, I now consider them friends. I meet with them so often. They're here to help guide me through everything. And, I absolutely feel supported in my role, and I just hope to, live up to the expectations and move EMS forward. I'm super proud of what we're doing here. I think that, we've already made so many strides, which I know Chris is going to talk about, but I'm just extremely excited for the future.
And one of the questions that comes up on a regular basis with Mark is how you nurturing yourself, how you taking care of yourself. And that's something I can't control it, but I can push the agenda on it. And that's something that we talk about on a regular basis. It's something that we talked about with the fire chief and with the fire chief before that. And, it's always easy to have a perception, but the reality is there's always more to a story than what is seen. And so it's just something to be aware of, but I appreciate that. I wanted to bring that up. So do you have anything else? Because if not, I'm going to move on to see if Kim has anything or anybody else before we get onto the agenda.
No, I don't think so. The only other thing I did want to mention real quick is we are proud to announce, or we have announced internally, Ashley West was an advanced EMT for us. She was funded by county programs and grants and things like that, was able to obtain her paramedic certification. So this is the first person to She is now operating as a paramedic. She was mentioned on that difficult call in Harrisville and receiving accolades, and that is a direct, directly caused by the county, and that paramedic wouldn't be in our community without the work that you all have done and the support that we've received. So thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna move on. Kim, do you have anything?
Very quickly, yes, and I only have one today, not five. I need to, this is for one of Mark's staff. One of our EMTs had a total knee replacement. His FMLA is exhausted, but he is not able to return without restriction at this point. So I would be looking for him. We're thinking about another 3 to 4 weeks before he's able to come back with no restrictions. His FMLA actually exhausts today. So we would be looking to get him through about the middle of February with an extension. And he is on short-term disability with us. So there's, I'm not sure what he's got left in terms of any earn time. I believe probably none, but,
Do you, I'm not sure. Not sure if you all understand what short-term disability is, but the county pays a premium and purchases a benefit for all employees that work 30 or more hours. And it pays 60% of their wages while they're out. And so we're not actually paying the 60% because the insurance company is. So they are allowed to supplement their time with another 40% of their leave time while they're out. But especially with how long he's been out, he's likely,
he's exhausted.
Exhausted.
His own earned time, accrued time. But he is getting his 60%, and he is continuing to pay the premiums for his own health insurance and things like that. And definitely wants to come back to us. Just needs to, we can't, in a role as an EMT, we can't have limited restrictions because you never know what kind of call he's gonna end up on. So
Yeah.
I would just be looking for about 4 weeks for him.
Move to approve the FMLA.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Stewart
Yes,
and Commissioner DiBernardo.
Yes.
All right,
Thank
we'll move
you.
forward. Thank you.
Do you want to text me when you want me to come back up?
She's gonna be joining us for the ASME
Uh-huh.
at 9:30ish, so it's it's just about 9:30
Oh.
now.
Okay.
So, do you have anything since you're here? Nothing
Not
except the
really.
website stuff?
yeah, I was just looking for the new website. I was looking for the meeting schedule. Didn't find it. Wondering, if I have to refresh my cache or.
Possibly that has helped in the past. The calendar is tricky, but
It's up there.
I'm still in the same place. Yeah.
Okay. Then, Steve is here to hear the gov thing, and so that's everybody. I'm gonna move forward then with master agenda item number 1, 2, 3, 4. That's something. Is that the Hemingway distribution, Cheryl Trombley is here, acting to inform the commissioners on the reception of the yearly Hemingway fund distribution.
so we talked about this last week and I reached out to the lawyer that does, or that controls this trust, and the check came. So our distribution, which is technically the 2023 distribution that we should have received in 2024, is in the amount of 27,142.58. And there is a form that needs to be signed and dated that basically we're receiving it. I typically have the chair sign it, but in addition to
Can I cash it?
in addition to signing it, if you have any interest in looking at the trust paperwork, just so you can see what's in it. And again, this is that we were in this Fred Hemingway's will, and annually we receive this distribution. And it said we put it into an investment account. Does anybody want to see the background of the paperwork?
This is 2023
Yeah,
distribution?
yeah,
That comes in 2024.
we should have received
we
it in
should've-
2024.
Right,
Okay.
it's just late, and I just think I think Cheryl reminded him.
So when does 2024 come? We were already past that.
We're gonna be, we should be getting a second check at some point.
Excellent.
We'll get 2024s and 2025. I am gonna go back and look at the history. I feel like we received it earlier in the
Yeah.
year, so and it used to be
Well,
a
Kendall
different.
retired, you know, so he's
Yeah.
probably moving a little slower.
Mike Bentley used to be the one I dealt with on
Yeah.
it, so, but they both must be from the same office.
They are.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm
Oh.
not sure.
Howard.
No, I thought Kendall,
Kendall's the one that handles this.
yeah, he's not,
Kendall,
he's
Kendall
not. in
does his own
That's his
thing,
brother.
and his brother still works with
Right.
Bentley on
Yeah.
Washington Street.
So,
And just so you know, there is, out of all this too, he was from Marlboro, so Marlboro gets their own check. So it's a nice thing, we've utilized it over the years, all for the right reasons.
Okay, so what is the balance now, considering our action last week?
so, and this is just me throwing out numbers in my head. I believe the balance was 103 without this allocation. So that would bring it up to about 130. We allocated 20, well,
Yeah.
up to 40,
Yeah.
but 20. We've also allocated $800 a month out of this. So I think we're gonna be close back down to about $100,000. Well, no, actually it'd be a little bit less if we go up to the 40.
Mhm.
So 30, so it would be probably about $90,000 with this distribution, but considering the fact that we should be getting 2024s
Yeah.
sometime, that's gonna be another like 27,000, so.
So, you don't need any motion on that, correct?
No,
Okay,
I
it's
just
just
need the
awareness.
form and then get
Yep.
the chair to sign the acceptance letter, which he has.
All right, county domain discussion, is not going to occur until they are here. I don't see that they are here, and I don't think they're gonna try to get here.
10 and 10:30.
10 and 10:30, okay. And I know that at some point Catherine is here. So. Oh,
Oh, there she is.
there she is. So I think what I would like to do, and Steve, I know you're here for the doc up, but if you could, we're going to go into what we call a non-meeting. And a non-meeting is for union discussions, because we do have an agreement with one of our unions. We'd like to go over that with you and make sure that we get your approval as we move forward to the ultimate approval of the delegation. And so, because they always ask if you guys are okay with what they're about to approve, so it's good for us to get your approval on this too. You guided us on this the prior commission guided us on this, so I would say I would like to have Kim stay in. I'd like to have Catherine stay in, and then everybody else steps out, and then hey, Catherine,
Yes,
when we're done with this, can you just text Steve? Or Kim, can you somebody text Steve that he can come back in, because he really wants to hear the .gov conversation. All right, so we are, motion to go into non-meeting.
Make a motion.
Yes. And then there's a second,
Second.
and Commissioner Stewart
Yes.
and Commissioner DiBernardo, we are in a non-meeting, so we can stop the recording. You can make a favor, can you text Mark if he wants to join us?
Yeah.
Okay, and see if anybody else is here. I don't see their.
Did Anna have something?
No, Anna really didn't. She just sometimes walks over from Registry of Deeds to see what's going on. That's what she did. All right, I can wait for Skip to come back if you want, or keep moving forward. Your call.
Oh, let's just go ahead.
So, I'll do this first before I go into the other song, because I want to make sure Mark can join us if he can or not. So the 23rd. This month is the first, and that's a Thursday, if I remember exactly. Just have to look and see, make sure I'm right.
21st of January,
23rd.
23rd, yeah, Thursday.
This year, this month, they're having a special, usually the meeting for New Hampshire Association of Counties Executive Committee is on Fridays. It's the first Friday of the month. This happened to work for everybody that the 23rd, Thursday, the 23rd, that they're gonna have the executive committee meeting at Primex, which is, we can give you the directions to Primex, which is Donovan.
It's 46 Donovan Street. They sent out an email.
Yeah, right. Got it. Good. Then they got your email. That was good.
Yeah, they did.
All right.
And so I did have a point of clarification at, I guess, 11, the commissioners meeting.
Yes.
So what happens to in the two meetings prior to that? There's like a 9 o'clock and then a 10 o'clock.
So I don't have the meetings right here in front of me, but if I would think the 9 o'clock meeting. Yeah, no, I do. I know this. 9 o'clock is me. It's executive committee. It's the leadership committee of the NHAC, and I'm at large rep. So I attend that meeting at 10 o'clock. You would attend that meeting. And that's the executive committee meeting. That's our normal meeting, and any and all people are welcome to that meeting. And we just go through an agenda of topics that are on the agenda. And then after that, you'll stick around, and if I'm asked to stick around, I will. Sometimes I am, just to give insight into certain situations. But the commissioners then meet, and this time I think it's more about or an organizational meeting of who's in what leadership position, and also like we have to go through for our budget and all that jazz. So there are certain roles. So you meet probably 4 times a year. And it's just the commissioners and NHAS, AHC staff. So, but who knows? Sometimes there are other people there too, so that's what I would say, that I would mark your calendar for 10 o'clock and then 11 o'clock, and then you're done. And again, it's normal meetings of the first Friday of the month. Doug already did his portion. Tell me if you just tell me the up here all of a sudden, I don't see it. Just looking.
So point of clarification,
Yes.
this is the 23rd. That's a Thursday. If
Mhm.
it goes to the first Friday of the month, does that mean they're meeting again
Mhm.
on the 7th?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah, that's my understanding,
Okay.
unless they say something different. But that would be my understanding.
all right.
I think the only other time they really may not meet is usually in the summer. They may take breaks unless they need to have conversations.
Okay,
I'm going tonight to the Swansea Select Board. They are having, they've noticed us about bringing forth a TIF district, tax. What is it?
Incremental finance.
Yeah, district. Thank you. And so what that would mean, I just want to hear,
Where's it
what,
gonna be?
it's in West Swansea. So I'm guessing, what I'm looking at is, the buildings, where the bridge is right there,
Yeah.
the brick building right there that they want to renovate, put apartments into and
Right.
upgrade that. When they
That's
get the
probably-
school done, though the school may own it, they may sell that and turn that property into whatever, housing, whatever it may be, but there's an area there that they want to turn into a TIF district. And
what is a TIF district?
Sharon, can you explain it a little bit?
Yeah.
Because it is something that impacts us.
Well, so what happens is a tax incremental finance district allows the town to be able to take the taxes that they generate from that area to utilize to pay on debt. So therefore, it's basically taken off the tax rolls as far as when the county, when the DRA sets the tax rates, it's based on the property valuations in each of the towns. That is no longer part of, it would no longer be part of Swansea's
Tax base.
tax base for distributing the county's taxes. Or allocation to the different, so like the city of Keene has several tax incremental finance districts, so the taxes that they generate, that they collect from their, their property paying is their money to help pay the debt down on projects that they've done, so that is what there must be getting ready.
So they want to do a building, a development. They want to have it removed from taxes that would go to the state or go to the county. And any taxes they collected, they would want to keep for themselves.
It would help pay off the debt that they're incurring.
It's a development.
And, right, and how long does it stay off?
10 years.
Is it,
It's
in this
here, in
particular
here, it's
case,
10 years.
it must be that they're doing a 10-year bond or a 10-year,
So
whatever. the
after
finance-
10 years, when they start collecting taxes, then it becomes
The
a
idea-
shared community
Yeah,
tax.
the idea is that the development is gonna raise the tax base, the value, so that after 10 years, then the taxes brought in from that area would be more than it would have been.
Right.
Yeah,
And so the bottom line
That's the
is
theory.
like, when the city of Keene did the Railroad Street, properties, we had to put in, $4 million worth of infrastructure and then a parking garage on top of that. The way they paid for that is to put a TIF district right there, to collect the monies that were coming off that they would have normally sent other places to bring that debt down.
so, and by statute, they're required, or by the rules of creating a TIF district, is that you have to notify interested parties about the public hearing. So we get them from the city of Keene.
So
Sometimes
it
they're-
doesn't really affect us plus or minus.
No,
It's
we're gonna
just
get
a
our-
neutral, it's a zero because we're not losing taxes, we're not gaining taxes. We're just, they're just doing their thing and in 10 years, we'll get the benefit.
Well, it lowers Swansea's tax base, so that the amount that they would pay us would be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're gonna pay us the same? Oh, right,
Yeah.
right.
It'd be
It-
little
We're,
less.
we're gonna still get our overall.
Right,
It might get shifted to another community is really what it comes down to. Their reduction in their over to all tax base may impact the other towns, because we're gonna collect whatever our voted on taxes to be raised is regardless. But it can cause for some little bit of the pendulum swing.
So that's where I want to be clear on. So if what they're doing doesn't lower their tax base and it doesn't raise their tax base, it's a zero. How does what they're doing affect anybody else around them? Because it's like nothing changed.
Well, I'm sorry, I think I misguided you. It could lower their property valuation of what is then their percentage of what they owe towards county taxes. So let's just say, and I'm just making this up, let's just say currently they're 15% of their property valuation represents 15% of the overall Cheshire County property
Right.
valuation. It's possible by them creating this TIF district, whatever's in it, that's part of the valuation of their property. And again, I'm gonna make this up. Let's say there was a piece of property in there that is worth $1 million or whatever, and it's now reduced from their overall
I understand.
valuation. Then their
Yeah.
15% could go to 14%, and then somebody's gotta make that.
Right, because that piece of the property they're using had tax value. Okay,
Right, so they're-
Typically, the loser there are the schools
Sure.
in the town. Temporary.
What they're trying to do is put in water and sewer,
Right, to those areas so that they can then.
which in the long run will
Right,
bring
that's
the
the
tax
thing.
base up, but as you say, for the 10-year
So-
period.
So West Swansea TIF district with self evaluation prior
It would be
5% calculation. It says it's 6.09% of West Swansea's district proportion of total assessed valuation. So if I'm reading this correctly, it sounds like perhaps out of their overall valuation,
Mhm.
this would carve out about 6% of their
Yeah.
overall valuation.
Right.
6%.
Their overall one,
So
One, just a little,
So is that-
their,
is that the
their
homestead-
overall, overall
homestead
is
rule
1
mills
billion.
and all that?
1 billion,
Oh,
and this
runs
would
up
carve
to
out 61
Route
million.
10.
But that's not
Oh.
insignificant.
Yeah, I think like from, where was the old restaurant there?
The fish restaurant?
Yeah, from there
Down,
to the trailer
Yeah,
park.
so-
And we don't have,
In inward.
and all they're doing is informing us.
Yeah,
Right, it's
Right.
just, it's an
It's a courtesy,
informational,
it's a courtesy.
right, because there is gonna be a change at some point,
Mhm.
and making us aware of what that change is going to be allows us to think forward.
Right.
All right,
Just, so I'm just gonna attend that tonight and listen to what they have to say. They've got other warrant articles they're putting on there, they're putting on the fire station again.
Seventh time, I think.
Yeah, they're trying to beat Marlboro's
One of
record.
these
for-
days.
Marlboro's record for a new school was 9 votes. So they've got a few more years to go. So just wanted to make you aware of that. And they're not here yet. So Mark, I'm gonna dive into just a little historical. Because I think it's good for you guys to know the full story and of how we got to EMS today. So, and Terry knows the story, so I apologize, but you can jump in at any point.
no, I've been able to stay out of the story. So I think I'm gonna just let it.
So in 2021. Let me just make sure I get this right, because it's, in 2021, we were approached by, Robbie DeLuzio, which is the son of Bob DeLuzio, who owns the funeral home over here, and also was the DeLuzio Ambulance Service. And at the time, they needed ventilators and they needed, IV pumps. And, the prior administration to the Biden administration had put together the CARES Act. And the CARES Act gave us some monies. So we had about some monies left over. We asked them how much that would be. It was about 70,000, just under $70,000. So we gave them that so that they could have that on their ambulances. We had known for a while, we had attended meetings for, with concerns around the ambulance service. It's been widely published in the Sentinel for years that the prior vendor had significant issues pertaining to being able to fund their ambulance service. With that in mind.
prior
we-
vendor, is that Deluzio or the one before that?
Deluzio.
Okay.
Deluzio did it for 60 years.
AKA.
There
Wow.
was
AKA
nobody,
Yeah.
there was nobody before them.
Okay,
There was a guy, you're right, there was, but
Yep.
it wasn't, it really wasn't an ambulance service. It's what they called back in the day a pickup service. It's what I've been
Right.
told.
Yeah, they had a station wagon with a guy with a tourniquet,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's pretty much.
Yeah, and so we attended, they had the annual meeting for the Southwest Fire Mutual Aid, and they had about 100 chiefs, and then we said, at the meeting, asked us to, to say something, and we talked about our concern, and that we wanted to do whatever we could to help support. So, and that was in, so May, then that was the fall, so in 2022, and I think I got this a year, 2021. We went to them and said, we said to them, okay, what else can we do to help support you? The Delusives that was. And it was at that meeting over at the funeral home that they said, buy us out. Now, they'll argue that Robbie says he did it, Bob Senior said he asked, but it doesn't matter, they asked us. We said at this point, that's not something that we were looking at, but they really expressed concern about the ability to continue to move forward and wanted to see what that would look like. So we said we'd look at it. And what we did do during that time is start looking at what that would mean if we did it, how we would go about it. But more importantly, we reached out to AMR. AMR is the biggest ambulance service in the country. who has contracts in Manchester and Nashua. And they don't want anything to do with it because they like coming in and doing one contract. Here it would be multiple contracts. They do it, but they don't like to do it if they, so they said no. We reached out to Stewart Ambulance Service, which is the biggest New Hampshire service in, ambulance service in New Hampshire. And then, we reached across the river to Rescue Inc. And because they had a presence over here and they said they didn't really want to come across the river. So we went back to them and said, okay, let's start heading down this road. Let's start talking about it. And so we did. For the next 5 to 6 months, Cheryl was at most, if not all those meetings. We started talking about it. To the point where we got to a point where we offered them an MOU and a price that is publicly, known because it was in the paper. And at that point, they agreed. There was an article that came out of the paper that they were going to move forward with us. We got to a point where we did a purchase and sales agreement. During that time, and also started meeting with their staff. Because it gave them approval. And the other thing that we did in this full time, during this time too, is they told us early on that we should reach out to Cheshire Medical Center. And talk to them, because they had a contract, we thought they had a contract. They had a contract, is what we were told, with the hospital for interfacility transfer. So we started that conversation during that time too. When we decided to move forward with the purchase and sales agreement, and this is all through attorneys. And we had multiple attorneys on different levels working with us on different angles. We gave it to them and a month went by, a second month went by, and a third month went by. And then during that time, because it was a purchase and sale, you go in and you do a study on the liens to see if it's clean or not. And it came back with we had about 50 some odd pages of concern, liens. The biggest one being that at the time, they had about a $1.2 million lien, which is in our register of deeds. It's public knowledge, about $1.2 million lien from the IRS. And, so we worked with them. We worked with them to a point where we worked with the IRS to see if they could drop that lien down so that we could purchase it, and then they could, but at the end of the day, the purchase and sale agreement went unsigned. 3 months in, during that 3-month period, we finally said, we need to move forward one way or the other. And at that point, we were already starting to have conversations with towns that your pricing is going to go up. And that's gonna go up at least 2.5 times more than what they were paying. That is a conversation that we've never changed through the process, ever. And so we moved forward and we finally had a come to Jesus meeting and we just couldn't get there. So we announced that we were gonna move forward. Now, we announced we were moving forward. And then about a month later, we received a call from the IRS asking if we're still in negotiation. And I said, no, we're not. And he said, that's a problem.
Well,
Because,
can you back up to?
yeah,
All right, before we move forward, a conversation with Cheshire Medical on why we should move forward.
well,
Because they were looking,
Cheshire Medical had done a study because they were thinking about starting their own system. That was gonna be a great cost to them at a time when they didn't have that, but they also had some concerns about some other issues too. I won't get into that detail in public. So we listened. I mean, we started listening to how many ambulances they had on during the day, what kind of staffing ratios they had. And it was problematic. We saw where the people were living and it was problematic. And so it was, and we actually, one of the small issues is that if we were gonna take it on, we wanted the office space upstairs and their son wanted to have his office and that was a problem too. So there was little things that were problematic throughout the whole thing, but at the end of the day, we just couldn't seal the deal. And it had nothing to do with our desire to seal the deals. If we're gonna go down this road, to be able to just take everything and what they had over there and just move forward would have been easier than than anything else out there. So we said we're gonna go on our own, continue on, and the IRS alerted us that they were going to close it, and that 1.2 is now at 1.6 million. Okay, because there's fines. Okay, and so we chose to move forward, not because we wanted to, but because they were saying they were going to close it. And we said, don't do it until we're up and running or have, and so using American Rescue Plan funding, people can clearly see we didn't do anything but what we said we're going to do. We were able to build, we were able to find a property. We wanted to be outside of Keene. The reason we wanted to be outside of Keene is because there's delays being inside the city. Just the way it is. And so we felt like our audience was gonna be out here and not in the city of Keene as much. And so we found this property. It's a strong room property. I grew up, there was a swimming pool in the backyard. I learned how to swim there. And so I knew the family quite well. And we were able to then get a good deal on the pricing. And then within a turnaround in about 5.5 month period of time, we were able to get a garage up and going and get the renovation that we needed for people to sleep in appropriate areas. The garage took a little bit longer so that the ambulances had to be up at the nursing home. It wasn't anything to do with any the Swansea not giving us a CO or the ability to open it up. It was more that the build out wasn't done yet, so we couldn't ask for the CO. There's nothing to do with anything.
No
And-
doors on the buildings even. for
Yeah, right,
months after we
right.
got it
Just,
done.
just things that needed to be ordered that just took time. And, so we were able to get that all done, and we were able to get operational because the hospital was really in dire concern about interfacility transfers. So that first year, that's what our focus was interfacility transfers. We opened up on November 14th of 2022, I believe. And, it's all a blur. And in 2022, and then we started again working with towns, and in the 2023, Westmoreland came to us in January of that year, January 9th or 12th, I can't remember, and said, could we talk to you about what it would cost for us to have EU as an ambulance service? And we came up with no intention but to say, this is what we're doing, this is how we're doing it. We gave them some numbers. They liked our numbers. They said, the day later, they said, we'd like to have your service start at some point. I said, I need to make the city of Keene aware of that. The city of Keene came back to us and said, we have a problem with that because they're under our contract. And I went back to the commissioners. The commissioner said, well, maybe we just say at this point, they need to work that out with the city of Keene first. And Westmoreland came back to us and said, that's not fair. You have a service that you're offering other towns. Just because we're in a contract with one town doesn't give us it doesn't mean that we can't look at other options. Why can't we have your option if it's a county operations? And we thought about it, and I think we said, they're right. We can't not do it, but we knew there was gonna be a firestorm with that, but we knew we had to do right. So we did. We moved forward with Westmoreland. And it was perceived as us cutting into them and undercutting the city of Keene. Our rate never changed. The biggest issue, the biggest learning moment that I take away from this whole EMS project adventure that we've been on, is that if people had just told us the reality of what they were facing, like Delusio's, we could have attacked it in a different way. If we had known, it was too late by the time they gave us the real information. We were meeting on a regular basis, but we never knew until we started doing the deep dive through our attorneys, how bad the situation really was. We saw it in the paper when they got slapped by the state of New Hampshire around certain things that they weren't doing for their employees, paying them. We heard the stories about checks bouncing and healthcare. not all these things, but we didn't, but we just knew those were what they were. Well, maybe they were just moments in time that we never really knew that. Had we could have dealt with it differently. And our pricing never changed. We said we were gonna be 2.5 times more based on the numbers that we were given. That's what we needed to the towns, and they laughed us out of the door because they still had Deluzio. And the towns need to look at this someday. And I don't think they will, but they need to look at it as they created this downfall too, because they had a great deal. And they never were pressured to actually pay what they actually needed to pay. And so it was a combination of those two things in my world that really created, but that story's never really got there. They always sort of chop off that, we always said this was the rate, and we never changed that rate throughout. And the delegation asked us to do, as the price went up, to do it gradually so that towns weren't hit and with a shock value. We said, okay, and so that's the process we're in now. And we know because of that you're gonna lose money until someday we can get to a point where we need to be. So
So we used ARPA money to smooth out that rate
as best we could.
for the 3-year period.
It was not a lot of money used out of the ARPA monies. Most of them, 95%, 98% ARPA money was for setup, build out and purchase of vehicles. So that, and supplies. So the first, well, our thought was if we didn't have any debt hanging over our head, that first year would be more about staffing.
But in retrospect, that smoothing. There were people out there who actually used that against us
Yeah,
and said that we were using that smoothing to undercut people. When we were actually asked to do that by the delegation.
right. And our pricing was this. It was based on numbers, it didn't change. And so that was always, that story was never really, even though we told it multiple times, it was never really told. We also met with the city of Keene. We presented to the city of Keene on multiple occasions to the city council on what we're doing, so they had an idea where we were, what we were trying to do. And it was just disappointing that, all these issues came up. That did come up. So we moved along, we're trying to get towns to join us, and, Swansea holds a meeting. And, they bring in Rescue Inc. and the city of Keene, unbeknownst to step back, my apologies. We've heard, the IRS levied the lien in January. Because whoever was in this position at the IRS prior did not do the right paperwork, they had to pull that. So it looked like, wait, you're doing something, now you're not doing something. So that didn't help the story whatsoever. But the IRS was always telling us, oh no, we have to take time to do the paperwork, and then we're gonna come in and we're gonna do what we need to do. You guys need to be ready. So we would ramp up with staff, then we ramp down with staff. It was a horror show of so many different things going on. And then, what we started hearing in April of 2023, that they may be closing. This was on like
Well, prior to that, just so
yeah,
so when they pulled the lien, that provided, the Delusios the opportunity to just basically let everybody know it was a mistake.
yeah.
So they really made the public believe that that's why it was pulled, because this was all a mistake, and that,
But it wasn't. It was a individual that now wasn't working on that case, that didn't do the paperwork that they were supposed to do. And it really came down, when you levy a lien like that, you have to make the Attorney General's office and the local aware of all that, and they didn't do it on the state level. And so they just had to do that paperwork. The second they did that over that period of time, and they kept telling us, we're coming. And so we knew that it was coming, but we didn't know when. And all of a sudden, I got a call on a Saturday saying, we're hearing rumors that the Deluzers are closing. So I started reaching out to people like Southwest Fire Mutual Aid, and they're like, no, we've heard rumors, we have nothing, no knowledge. I reached out to some towns, we have no knowledge. I actually reached out to Michael Brantley, who's the town administrator for Swansea. He said, yeah, we heard about the rumors, and I reached out to Bob DeLuzio on Thursday or Friday, that before the Saturday I heard about it. And he said, oh, no, we're great, we're strong, we're gonna be here for years to come. It's actually, he sent a letter to the selectmen outlining all this, so that it's common knowledge. And so all of a sudden, we get official notice on Monday that they're, on Sunday or Monday, that they're closing, and they're closing Tuesday night of that week. So all of a sudden, we're ramping, we're like, all right, this is emergency as high as level, we gotta be ready to go. Unbeknownst to us, the city of Keene was in talks with Rescue Inc. to have them come over here. And so, and take on the contracts for, and DeLuzio, the city of Keene and Rescue Inc. were in conversation to have Rescue Inc. come over and take this on. Which, let's go back a ways. We asked Rescue Inc. to come over and take this on. We have the notes from the minutes from that meeting. And they said, no, we don't want to do anything more. And even when they did come over here, they weren't wanting to do what's called a PIP, the interfacility transfers. They just wanted to come in, back up Keene and do the towns that DeLuzio did. And that we could do anything else that was left over in the interfacility transfers. That's how they wanted to work it all out. We tried to come up with a model. At the end of the day, we couldn't. And Rescue Inc. finally gave notice that if you don't do this, you know, we're gonna have to pull out. And so Swansea had a meeting. At that meeting, we stated our case, they stated their case. It was a horror show because everybody was just thinking that we're undercutting and all. And I just said, we're staying here. I mean, this was at a time when our guys would see other people and they'd be sworn at, they would be driving down the road and they'd be wear number one sign at them as they were driving by, whatever it was, and we'd get reports. And I said, ignore it, just do your job. Just do your job. And at the end of the day, Swansea had a second meeting. It was at that meeting, people presented a lot of questions. We were the former fire chief of the city of Keene said people were gonna die on our watch and accused us, all the stuff. It's all recorded. And so, at the end of the day, we just said, here's what we're gonna do. And Swansea in that meeting said, we're going with Cheshire EMS. We understand that there may be an upswing of cost 3 years down the road, but we like what they're presenting now, and we think they can do that. So that's where we came from. That's, you know, all of a sudden other towns started falling, everything fell into place. And this past year, you've seen the service. This morning, you heard about some of the accolades that we're getting from people in the community. All we want to do is just do our job in this day and age. The vendor, you know, the sad thing about all this in my mind is that there's a vendor that the DeLuzios that did this for 60 years did an outstanding. I tell this story all the time. First time I ever met Bob DeLuzio, I was 10 years old and he straightened my bow tie at my father's funeral because they were taking good care of him. That's the first time I met him. I've been a friend of that family for years. So we never had an agenda. We never had any idea except for how do we make this work for everybody involved and ensure that people, when they're in crisis, we can care for them. So
My take on the DeLuzios, Bob DeLuzio never had the heart to raise the price where they should have been. And always tried to make it work, and just year by year buried himself deeper and deeper until the thing wasn't gonna happen anymore. And then, you know, we were asked for information, you know, on his death and everything, just wasn't forthcoming. Towards the end, turned out to be something like $2.2 million or even more than
it's
that.
a little over $2 million.
When we weren't willing to just give him a carte blanche check to buy him out. I can imagine, you know, that he felt like. And so got together with Keene and Rescue Inc. And Rescue Inc. Said, okay, yeah, we'll hire your employees. We'll take over, make everything good and.
But they weren't going to, and they were only gonna have 2 ambulances.
Yeah,
They're running 5.
that was, and they were gonna come over with the 3rd-year price,
Right.
you know.
Right, so at the end of the day, there was a lot of back and forth, which we, there was a complaint that was put in, that was written by an employee of Rescue Inc., that also was an employee of Deluzio's, and the chief of the city of Keene. In that document, we looked at it, we read through it, we had multiple people look at it. We wrote a response to it because it was so inconsistent, it was so personally written. And not, and it's factually incorrect. They had dates like that, we promised the hospital a medic level ambulance in the Westmoreland, and we couldn't deliver both. Well, that's just factually incorrect. We had 2 ambulances running for the hospital. 3 months later, Westmoreland came in and asked us about something, not at the same time. It was, they said they had 4 applicants for ambulance services in that's for Swansea bid. And Swansea tells us that's not the case. You only had 2, and it was the 2 that were there, you and Rescue Inc. It was that kind of thing throughout the whole thing. You just had to go through it. So we can share with you. I know that, with that, we can give you that response that we have so that you have that and get as much information as possible, and we're always willing to answer any questions. I actually go with Mark. When Mark does orientation, he invites me down and I sit there because we have people that maybe from Deluzio, maybe from Rescue Inc., maybe from some other place. They may have heard stuff, not as much now, but back when we first started this, I said, ask me anything you want. Mark's a good example of that. Mark had some questions. Yeah, Mark had some questions and I, when he first came on as a medic and we spoke for an hour and a half. I answered any question he had. And if I didn't know it, or if I couldn't say it because of legally, I told him that. So.
Yeah, there were a lot of things that we couldn't talk about because of non-disclosure. But the one question, and Skip, you brought it up at the budget hearing.
I want to bring it up again, yeah.
Go right ahead.
But
Go right ahead.
I have 2 big questions like that. One's gonna be, at what point is the EMS gonna break even, pay for itself?
Mhm.
And the other one is, I don't fully understand RSA 29(1) as far as what rights or what, what the county can do. I know in there, among the other mandatory stuff, the courts and the House of Correction and there's Maplewood, but it also says something to the effect of can provide services. So I'm curious as to how much could we provide, legally. And the question was also brought up by a couple of the constituents, right? As to, where did we get the authority to start this thing?
NACO initially had something posted that was completely wrong. Multiple accounts some of it had nothing to do with us. So when we reviewed that,
Who's that?
NACO, National Association of Counties,
Okay,
had something on, they have something on for each state.
okay,
And then when this person that was writing up the complaint, it's not litigation against us, it's not anything, it's just a complaint to
Oh, I
the Treasury
understand that.
Department. And just so you know, a complaint that we may never hear anything about.
Right.
Because if they don't investigate it, you don't ever hear about it. And that was what, 2 years ago now?
where'd the complaint go to?
It goes to the US Treasury.
The Office of the Inspector General specifically, that handles.
For the
Treasury
country?
Department.
Or
Yeah.
for the state?
Fed.
That's all.
That's,
Because
You'll never hear again, okay.
anyone can just
Well,
go
it's sort of
online
like
and find.
if the cops have a local investigation and it turns out to be nothing.
yeah,
The cops don't come out and say it was nothing, they just drop it.
yeah.
And
Yes.
is it true that anybody can file a complaint?
Yes.
For any reason, so
Yes.
I could be a tinfoil hat person. And
I've heard that.
exactly, I have, and call them and file a complaint. That doesn't mean it's legitimate, it doesn't mean it's anything, it just means a complaint was filed. And they choose to pick it up and look at it, or they choose to say, oh, we know she's a tinfoil hat person. We're just gonna file it away.
That's correct. There's an online form that I could go fill out right now, and anybody who has a small business or some sort of entity, I could lobby it against anyone that I wanted. Right this second, I could submit it in about 10 minutes
And,
probably.
and if you read the complaint, there were things that they complained about suggesting that we were not using our funds appropriately in many different fashions, that the treasury should have looked at that to say, you can just tell that this is an entity that is not happy that they didn't get any of the money, because they were saying things that we could use the money for. We were allowed to use the money in that manner. There's also
You're referring to the ARPA funds?
the ARPA
Yeah.
funds. So I think, I mean, it was a very long complaint, but I would imagine if the treasury looked at it, it wasn't even, if they were looking at what their complaints were to suggest that we were doing something wrong, they would be looking at their own words to say that they could do that. It's not even that they weren't even given enough information to then say, oh, we need to look into this. Because, oh, they're out, so they were telling them what we did, but they were wrong in the fact that we could do what we did. So that's, I guess, why
And I want to answer your
I-
question,
I feel like.
but if you don't mind, because I just realized we only have, Jason here for until about 11 or maybe a little after, but not much. And I want to get back to it afterwards, if you don't mind, and just if we could go to the conversation with Jason, and then we can talk about all the other things that were recognized through the state so that we can run this.
And what is the RSA? What is the RSA you referenced?
So
I think 29-1. Yeah.
Yeah, 29,
One is treasurer,
1 county treasurer and county taxes.
but I know there's something that obviously identifies what the county has to do, and I know that's, I
Right.
kind of figure out what.
And that is just a question as to, it said something, provide services, so that would mean if you had the public backing or something, you could have the transportation, you could have all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And.
Or nursing home is an example, we don't have to run a
No.
nursing home.
No, we don't.
You're required to take care of
people that are fought for Medicaid.
That's what that $8 million budget line is for Health and Human Services, we're required to pay for it, we don't have to be a provider.
Correct.
right, you don't have to have your own facility, but you have to pay for the people,
Right.
right,
Absolutely.
which, okay, understand, but. What are the limits, I guess is my
Yeah.
question,
Exactly, yeah.
or what is the, you know, where it says provide services? You can do that, you can do anything? No,
Yeah,
and I think it's a fair question, because it's been asked of me,
yeah, the 23-1 powers as corporate body is what you're talking about.
thinks.
Yeah, and at the bottom,
I
it
said
says
29.
and other necessary act relating to the property and concerns of the county, which allows us to go down that road, but there's other things like we're recognized by Medicaid, Medicare, but we can get into that in a second.
Yep.
If you
Go
don't
ahead.
mind, I want to do this while we have Jason here. And also Rob Hummel has joined us too, so.
Feel free to join.
So master agenda item number 1, 2, 3, 5, county domain discussion. Jason's here, acting expected to discuss transitioning Cheshire County to .gov domain. This is a conversation that came up in prior meetings, and we wanted to see if Jason could join us so that he could have us better understand and answer any questions we may have. It's not that we're looking one way or the other at this point. We'd like to be better educated by what this benefit would be. So, Jason.
Hey, thanks for having me today, everyone. I'll give you a brief kind of overview of the .gov program. It is a national initiative being driven by the Department of Homeland Security. Just by way of how New Hampshire is implementing it, The Overwatch Foundation, which is a 501c3 not-for-profit in New Hampshire, has a statewide contract to move all municipal entities and eligible entities, which includes counties, to the .gov domain as a cyber protection. Little bit of background on this. In New Hampshire, we are the principal incident responders for cyber for the entirety of the state of New Hampshire, all 564 municipal entities. And when we look at Primex's payouts and cyber claims, one uh, one method of attack stands out far and away over every other type of attack, and that is impersonation of domains. And what that essentially means is that if you have a .com, .us, .org type domain, a foreign adversary or a criminal organization can register a lookalike domain, a domain that is maybe one letter off, or if there's an M, they register an R and an N, which kind of, if you look at it quickly, looks like an M, especially on mobile devices. And they use these domains to create email accounts that are lookalike accounts for your organization. So essentially what happens is this is one of the tricks. This is part of the trickery they use to get folks inside of the organizations to click on links or to furnish information, which becomes the principal reason that we are hemorrhaging tens of millions of dollars a year in New Hampshire to banking frauds, ACH transfer frauds, ransomware attacks, payouts associated with them. And it really all stems, I mean, the vast majority of cybercrime in New Hampshire starts with a well-meaning teammate or employee making a mistake. All right, and it really is as simple as that. Now, there are technologies that we put on all email that can help safeguard. But what we have found, and we've seen this at a national level, this isn't unique to New Hampshire, that impersonation is the number one way that folks are getting into, that these criminals are getting into our organizations and tricking our employees. So the .gov program does a few things. The first is that the .gov program is administered by Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, which is a division of Homeland Security. So a criminal cannot register a lookalike .gov domain. It removes that avenue from as an attack type for your organization. That anti-impersonation protection there is one of the principal ways that .gov does help. We're also in a lot of conversations, Department of Justice and certainly court systems throughout the nation have been targets of this type of crime. And so there's conversations throughout the country right now, as well as in New Hampshire, about whether or not the judicial branch should accept documents from non.gov addresses and things like that. So what we're seeing is the whole nation for eligible entities moving into the .gov space because it is a bunch more better controlled and does negate one of the principal attack types that we're seeing. A lot of the conversations that are going to come down to, they'll require some legislative action or some policy, some rules actions, whether or not to bar non-government addresses or whatnot. But we see this in the defense space already, where there's .mil and .gov addresses that you have to have a .gov address in order to log into things. And so at the national level, or to send emails back and forth, at the national level, we're already seeing this move towards saying, hey, these entities are approved. The public is starting to recognize .gov as being official and being, the entity that they believe they're conversing with, because it's not just your employees. It's when you're talking to the community or you're talking to your peer counties, the impersonators can impersonate you with those counties or with the public. And so there are these national campaigns, and we certainly have one here in New Hampshire, educating people that when you are a .gov, that is the that is the stamp of official. This is the only way to become a .gov is to be a qualifying government entity, or there's some quasi-government entities, but to become, to qualify for this program. And so when they receive something from a .gov or they go to a .gov website, there is vetting that has been done, which is not possible for .us's or .coms or .nets, or those are mostly business and US agency type domains. And so as we educate the public, when we're doing, if you've heard of the Municipal Cyber Defense Program, some of you may have been to those trainings. That program is a 4-year program, which is shifting its focus towards the public right now. We're educating them to look for these .gov addresses, at the same time that moving to the .gov addresses is being federally sponsored, so it's at no cost to you. The Overwatch Foundation does foot the bill, whatever those bills may be. They do make it cost neutral for you, and that gives you some inclination of how important our federal government feels this is, and certainly our state government. Ken Weeks couldn't be here, but I'll take some liberty and speak for him in saying that, our .gov program is one of the most important cyber moves you'll make this year, if you choose to make it. And so you can go right back to him and double check that quote, but I'm sure he will be happy. I've heard him say it many times to many of your peer counties. So we're having this conversation at the state level, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have or concerns you have about any of what I just said.
Does anybody have any questions in reference to, us taking a deeper dive and looking into .gov or not? Rob, do you have any questions or thoughts? Okay.
What's the disadvantage of going that way?
I,
Is there a disadvantage?
Well, I mean, from a quick look, I don't know how other communities have dealt with this, but it's like, would you have to create, and somebody can tell me, Rob, you can tell, anybody can tell me this, well, wouldn't you have to create for every domain that we currently have, wouldn't you have to have another domain created for that, so that you can slowly transfer that over to the .gov? Does that, the smaller level is every card would have to be crossed out and .gov would have to be, instituted in. Those are little things I can think off the top of my head, but billing and all that would have to be changed, I would think too, through the finance department. But I don't know, am I wrong?
So the program does account for much of that. For instance, I can give you examples of police departments that had put their their .coms on the cars, right? And so the grant has gone and done reimbursements for those types of things. The legislative branch, the entirety of the legislative branch is moving to .gov this month. And the grant is covering reprints of their business cards and letterheads. What we tried to do was envision, what were the costs and what were the gotchas? And so the grant doesn't cover everything in all cases, but I've seen it be very generous in terms of, if you come back and say, hey, business cards and letterhead are a reason that, we kind of don't want to change the name. They can really help with that. And in many cases, they'll end up paying for the vast majority, if not all of that. So a lot of that is worked into the program. The other piece that I'd say is that everything happens in parallel. So the folks at the foundation would walk you through this if you decided you wanted to investigate this with them. But essentially, they're going to register all of the second domains, all of the .gov versions, and you get to pick what those are, right? If how you want those to look, what those names are. It doesn't have to be exactly your name. And then they work to transition them over. They do cutovers for them. They redirect, they help you redirect emails from the old addresses to the new addresses for a time. All of that stuff is worked into the mechanics of the grant program. The one thing that I think is really important to take measure of is that a lot of your community does know the address. And So we do have to bring them up in parallel. If they go to your old website name, it's gonna have to automatically redirect to the new one. You don't want anybody to not be able to get in touch with you or to use the services that they have been accustomed to, and all of that is built into the grant program. So they're gonna develop project plans and walk you through, okay, this website's redirecting, anybody who puts in the old one's gonna end up on the new one. Anybody who goes to a certain, form or something they download from you, that's going to get moved over to the new one, and all that work is thought about during that discovery phase. And so if you decide that it is something that you want to do and you want to investigate it with the foundation, you get about halfway through the engagement before you're committing. You don't have to say, yes, we want to do this, we're signed on the line day one. After the investigation and the evaluation is done, they issue you a report that says, here's how we do it, here's where the gotchas are. Do you want to continue with this? And then you can have that discussion, obviously bring in your IT providers, your IT folks and then all of that to make sure that everybody is comfortable. So there is another gate in the future if you do decide you want to investigate.
Okay. Questions?
Well, I guess the question I would have, excuse me. I had attended the original presentation that was just in the other room last month. And I was struck by the amount of fraud and abuse and such like that that slips through, and that the .gov being hosted by a governmental agency that doesn't allow criminal elements to slip through, sort of struck me as being very important. But then, I had heard that, that's really not as essential, and that it's maybe not something that we have to worry about too much, and that we, and our, our New Hampshire, NH.US systems we have in place are adequate. I would just like to know, whether that is true. Is
Yeah.
that, could
So-
you, Rob, could you?
I can address some of that if you like. I have some handouts for you guys that we can walk you through. But the .gov domain as a name is essentially the vanity license plate of domains. It does absolutely nothing to protect you from compromise. And in fact, it has the opposite effect of what we would want to accomplish. For example, from the New Hampshire Department of Information Technology website, .gov domains are often associated with credibility. When the public sees a gov domain, they tend to trust it. Okay, these are weasel words. A .gov domain doesn't ensure that anything coming in or going out is any more secure than it ever was. It does protect you against lookalike domains, but that's not a problem for us. If you go through your thing, page 2 there, it shows an email coming from Primex. On the next page, it talks about gov domains. It says, "Will provide comfort to your citizens that you are in fact a government organization and not a spoofed email or website." That's not correct. It will say that the name is not spoofed, but not that the email is valid. And in fact, if we go to number 3, here we have an example of an email coming from valleycountymontana.gov. This was sent to our sheriff. It contained an attachment. Now, if it came from a .gov, we should trust it, right? Unfortunately, this email was infected with a virus. And the reason is because the email user is no more protected from compromise by having .gov than anything else. If his account gets compromised and emails go out under that .gov name, we're supposed to trust them because it's trustworthy. But if we did, it would have exactly the opposite effect. Clicking on this would have compromised the account. Again, go number 3 there. There's the original email, and it talks about this rationale there about .gov asserting that when you get it, you're supposed to trust it, but it didn't stop him from sending out the infected message, and it didn't stop us from receiving it because it had a .gov. It was our systems in place that did that. Number four, dc.gov. You'd think of all the domains in the world, Washington DC.gov would be secure. No, it's been compromised not once, but multiple times. And here are emails coming from dc.gov emails with links, and some of these links are going to France. They're going to a candy shop in India that was compromised, things like that. Here we have an email from SAU13.org, another domain that was compromised. But you'll notice if you look at some of this, the to list, all of those people with .gov domains on the receiving end didn't protect them from getting this compromised email. They received that email, and if they clicked on it, they would be infected. New Hampshire retirement system, and then I just have a bunch of domains that have been infected. New Hampshire retirement system, NTM.Inc., one of our transport providers, harmonyhealthcare.com. Having a .gov domain wouldn't have stopped any of these emails from coming in. So if somebody says to you, like Medicare and Medicaid services say, to use our system, you have to upload a certain document type and you have to use it in this format, well, then we have to do it. And if Medicare decides that unless you have a .gov domain, we won't accept it, then we can get the domain. But it's not a matter of money, and Grant isn't gonna make it any easier because we don't use MSPs, service providers, we don't use Office 365. All of that conversion will have to take place here, and it's really not a matter of money for the IT department, it's just a matter of time. And so we can take this on. Somebody wants to get us a .gov domain, we can ease it in. And it's not gonna be cost-wise for us as much as it is time-wise. But as far as security, no increase in security at all. But what we have in place will apply to that domain just as well as it does to others. We own about a dozen different domains like Cheshire County Attorney.us and things like that we don't use, but we park on so no one else can use them. So some of those domains that might be used to spoof us, we own those and we just park them.
Okay, you mentioned that having one could even have the effect of being detrimental,
Have the effect of what?
well, of not being good. I mean, having one,
Well, if the assertion is that if you see .gov domain in the from address that you can trust it, then I would say that that's really a false narrative. Because the .gov email people are no more protected from being compromised as any other domain. And in fact, some of these .gov domains that I have looked up aren't even hosted in the United States. They're running on providers hosted in Canada and other countries, which is kind of the antithesis of security.
So if I might correct just a couple of statements, no one's suggesting that the .gov does any kind of anti-malware or email filtration. The numbers very clearly show in New Hampshire that one of the chief email phishing issues, which is the big part of how most cyber events start, are directly the result of impersonated domains. Right. These are the look-alike domain problem. In fact, we've had over 70 municipalities in the last 18 months fall victim to exactly this type of attack. So it's not true to say that New Hampshire doesn't have an email and domain impersonation issue. In fact, we have an extremely large one. If you look at 70, there's only 564 municipal entities, right? So 70 is a visual percentage of that. It's 15%. Have experienced this in a very short amount of time, resulting in some kind of cybercrime. So I would caution you all to understand that this is a significant issue for your peers. You may not have experienced this issue personally, and that may be a result of some of the technology you have in place, but it also just may be dumb luck that they haven't gotten around to it. I know that other counties, we've certainly worked cybercrime in counties, have fallen victim to this exact attack. So what we're looking at is using the .gov program to eliminate one of the most pervasive attack types in New Hampshire, as clearly shown, by the statistics for our little battle space here. And we're a small state, so that's quite a bit of cybercrime for one municipal sector in a state. The other part of it is,
Let me
Yeah.
address that. The .gov domain does not protect us from receiving emails from lookalike domains. And as probably 95% of the email we receive does not come from those .gov eligible agencies, the impact on us is going to be minuscule. And again, the whole focus of the .gov program in your own email here is that it provides comfort to the receiver that the email is legitimate, and that's not the case.
the public is being trained that that impersonated domains are an issue, right? Which is factual from their point of view. So while I appreciate that any email system and any technology can be defeated, right? I have a sipper.mil address that gets compromised, right? Like DoD gets compromised, huge government agencies get compromised. The goal here is not to say you're impenetrable. You'll never be impenetrable. But if we can eliminate even one of the attack types, especially the number one attack type that our municipal sector in New Hampshire is seeing, that's where, millions of dollars of federal grant money are coming down to move this program forward, right? And so right now, we know that we've moved probably, I don't know, 30 or 40
Right.
organizations, right?
That's your objective, but are you saying that if we have a .gov domain, we will not receive impersonated emails?
No, I said in the beginning of my statement, I said,
But it
.gov.
does nothing to protect us from the very thing you're talking to caution.
That's not true. That's patently
How does
false, right?
How does having a .gov domain protect us from a domain impersonation?
It does not filter emails, right? Your domain never filters emails. That's not the way that works, right? However, for there's two ways you look at this. From the staff receiving emails, right? The most common way that a staff member is going to receive an impersonated email is either from another county, another government entity, whoever they're looking at doing business with, or an impersonation of one of your senior leadership. The classic example of the county commissioner approved this transfer and there's a impersonated domain associated with that account. If your staff knows that that your accounts internally are only .gov and other counties and other towns in your county are only .gov, then the impersonated email has to be less believable. Sure, they can send you anything they want that you don't have the ability to filter or not filter, but it won't have a .gov on it, right? So
Right.
that level is actually a protection.
Right, the problem here is that when they do receive that email and it says
Yeah.
.gov, because that person's email account, they leaked their password somehow.
Sure.
Those are the kind of messages we get. We get them from the Department of Safety. We get them from the Department of Justice here in New Hampshire. And they are legitimate. They come right from their mail server, their outlook.com. We trace them right back. And you want people to trust it more because it says that. And I'm saying that's not the case.
But you're talking about a different attack. You're talking about a business email compromise within that entity, right? That's not the attack we're safeguarding against.
They're not trying to spoof that.
We're talking, you're right, we're talking about you, so you're talking about two different attacks, right? A business email compromise, if there's a legitimate compromised account inside of the entity that you are transacting with, then that's coming from the person's real email account. It doesn't matter what that email account, that could be a Gmail account at that point, you're going to think that's legitimate because the email itself is legitimate. It's just as part of a different type of attack.
Right.
The .gov safeguards you.
.gov increases the trust in the domain. That's what I have issue with. It does not. It should not. In fact, that opens you up to more compromise. If we had clicked on these emails that came from legitimate .gov domains, we would have been infected.
But that's a true statement, no matter what technology or system you have in. Like, that's almost a non-statement because that's like saying if it's infected, it's infected. Yes, I agree with you that an infected email, if you click on it, is infected regardless of where it comes from. That's definitely true because that's just straight logic. This isn't about infection and it's not about business email compromise. It's about the most common attack type, which is an external person, not inside of your partners or your other county's email systems, registering a lookalike domain and being successful in tricking the employees or the public by impersonating you or someone in your organization. And that,
And
and
if
that
you don't
by
see
far
them.
and away, hold on, that by far and away is the most common phishing attack type that results in a financial loss in New Hampshire.
Not in Cheshire County, however.
And I love that for you, but I would caution you all about making a decision based on something that happens routinely outside of your county, but hasn't yet happened inside your county.
Okay, other questions? If not, then I want to thank you, Jason, for this conversation this morning. And
Absolutely.
we'll take your information and we'll see how they want to proceed.
Absolutely. Just let us know. And, feel free to reach out to DOIT. Feel free to reach out to any of your state level leaders and cross-reference their opinions of the program and the good things they've seen happen. So I'd invite you to do your own diligence on that as well.
All righty. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Again, this is the vanity license plate of emails.
Okay, so what about our system that is preventing what, the kind of things that other people are experiencing? What is it about ours that is working to prevent?
Well, we do a number of things. One, we do geo-blocking, which means we don't receive email. We don't even allow email servers in most foreign countries to send us anything. So people in China or Russia, they connect to the server immediately hangs
Oh,
up.
case in point, when I was in Tampa, I couldn't check my email.
In Tampa, you should have been able to.
No, I was not, I was unable. You didn't-
Well, we don't
But anyway.
consider Tampa to be a foreign country.
Yeah. Anyway.
You didn't go.
You ain't been there for a while.
We do the US, Canada, and when Eli's out of town, we do Puerto Rico. But other than that, everything is shut down.
Yeah, all right.
So
Okay, I
that's-
didn't mean to interrupt your chance.
That's our first step. Our next step is that when emails come in, they're filtered for common things that would indicate a compromise. Things like words like direct deposit, things like that. Our email filters go through and segregate those emails for manual review. And if somebody comes in and wants us to change a password or do a link, and you'll see some of the emails in this sample packet will have things like that. Those get tracked, set in a queue, they're reviewed, and then we release them. So we have some automatic systems and we have some manual systems inspection based on what we've learned over the years. If an email comes in from a random Gmail address and there's no reason to think it's blocked, and it contains a link in it that doesn't appear to be suspicious, and somebody clicks on it, the next step for that to try to get to that thing is to go out through our, what's called our DNS system, our domain name server, which basically changes a website's name to a number of location. That filter is set up to look for sites that are malware, sites that are out of the country. It looks at the content of those to see if there's a malware that might be on there that you would download. And a lot of things get trapped there. You guys can all talk about how many times you see that block notice when you're trying to, so we have a multi-stage defense both coming in and going out. We may get an email that looks legitimate. People click on the link and they say, they write me and say, I can't get there. And I say, well, that's good because this is someplace in China. And it's a phony email. So we operate on the basis that we're going to be compromised, that these things are going to happen. And what's our response to that ahead of time? So we put those things in place to protect it. The .gov doesn't benefit us. It might benefit somebody else who sees a .gov and thinks, okay, nobody has imitated, not a lot of people imitating co.cheshire.nh.us. And a few years ago, remember, US was the big thing. Everybody had to go to a .us domain, and they came out of New Hampshire because co.cheshire, nh.us is owned by New Hampshire, so nobody can get an nh.us except if you go through the state. It's the same thing now, just with a different .gov, and it'll be something else in another 5 years. But, and again, we can get the domain, we can register it, you have to figure out what you wanna call it. We can put it in place, and if it ever comes down to where they say, you have to have this to access Medicaid or, you know, things like that, then we'll have it in place, but it's not going to provide any security for us. It might benefit the people that are receiving it, but it's gonna tell them that they should trust this email when if somebody, you know, your email account gets compromised and somebody sends something out under your name with a thing in it, they say, well, I saw .gov, so I clicked it. It's almost worse than it was before.
So we could get a .gov and just use it as an alias.
We-
we just put it in the closet, so we needed it.
We can add it into our email system. And we could even set it up so that if you wanted to use it, you could. And if something came in, it would still kind of get redirected to your current mailbox. The place it actually might benefit is probably on the website. If the website name had that official name, that would be a benefit and it would be easier to type.
Certainly it'd be easier for me, for my email address.
Like I said, nobody's trying to imitate our email.
Every time I try to get in my Sentinel thing, it doesn't remember it. I don't know why.
Right.
And I have to say, get up. Okay.
The bigger problem we have with email is not so much things coming in, but the way employees use their email for personal things. So they'll go to DunkinDonuts.com and they'll sign up for their Dunkin' Donuts card using that email. And then they'll go, oh, I'll just use the same password as my email account.
Yeah.
Then Dunkin' Donuts gets compromised. They go through all of those email addresses and they try those passwords. So that's really where the issue comes in. And again, we have some ways of dealing with that, but.
So there'd be no harm in just getting the address and sitting on it.
There would be no harm in
So
doing that.
We'd just be.
Yep.
Yeah, when they do force us to do it, we'll.
And we would have it available email wise. Now, like I said, if you wanted to make your letterheads and your business cards and everything reflect that, that would be some cost involved and everything, but it really wouldn't be an IT function. But as far as IT, there's really no cost involved for us. It's just time to do it.
Oh, we could actually, through their program, we could actually have signs and letterhead and things like that paid for.
Well, then if you did that, then I'd have to convert everybody over. So,
Okay.
I'd say get the name and sit on it, but I wouldn't bother.
that's my instinct. So, but you have to come up with a name. And we have to see if it's available. So you can call yourself anything you want.
Well, if it goes through, if the .gov goes through Homeland Security, then there is no other Cheshire.com. I'm just Cheshire.gov. Is there?
Except for Cheshire, Connecticut.
So like for
Cheshire,
example,
whatever else there is out there that I
They
don't.
have no right to have it.
in here, they,
We were here first.
We were first.
in here, the valleycountymt.gov. So Valley County in Montana.gov, that was the name they chose.
Yeah.
We could choose Cheshire County, maybe .gov, that's probably not available. Cheshire NH might be available. You know, the best county in New Hampshire.gov might be available. It bears no reality to what you want, so it's just really again, it's a vanity license
Yeah,
plate.
if they're Cheshire County, we could be County of Cheshire.
County of Cheshire.
Yeah.
Well, aren't we all really?
It's like the
So-
hobbits.
So picture yourself on the phone and saying, my email address is blah, 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 at countyofcheshire.com, you know. Do we want it to be bigger than it already is, or?
Yeah.
CCNH?
If we're gonna go any road, I would say what Skip has said is, let's do what we need to do to hold on to it and just, that's it. I mean, in my world thinking, if it's not broke, don't fix it kind of thing, but that's just me. You know, people feel like they need to have that .gov, that's fine, but yeah, it's long to do on your email. I mean,
Well, when I attended that,
I autofill.
when I attended that session out there, they did make it seem very urgent.
Hmm.
And I suppose it's no different than any kind of seminars you go to, you know, timeshares, condos and stuff like that, come to mind. But why, you know, why I wanted it to come before us here is to get that other point of view, and I guess I'm convinced that there really is no urgency. That, you know,
The only urgency is there's some money behind it right now for a period of time. That is the only urgency that I've
yeah.
heard so far. And I just don't think it's,
Well, when they keep saying money's available, somebody's collecting this.
Correct.
These people are.
They're
are-
collected some of that money. They're salespeople for something.
I get it.
I
get it.
like, no.
And they want you to believe that this is really, really
Well,
necessary.
you
and-
know, the other issue is my husband's company did training around don't click links.
Hmm.
And they sent out an email after they did all this training to all their employees and sent them an email with the link. Like a third of the people clicked on the link anyway. That is where it all begins anyway. Don't click on the link.
yeah, I mean, my biggest issue right now is when I see something like that, I do wanna click on and say, come on, you can do better than that. But I can't even do that
No,
because
and they're it,
you know,
right.
I want to like get into it, Steve, you know, if I can really screw with them as much as they're trying to screw with me, but I can't, I understand it, so I have to let it go.
Oh, that's the bigger issue. Don't press the button.
So again, I guess I wanna echo what you're saying. The biggest thing I wanna get across to you is that we're not in trouble. The ship is not sinking. This is not an emergency. This is not urgent. There's no great danger that this is suddenly gonna switch off and protect us from. I have no problem with it. You know, and again, I serve at your pleasure. You wanna switch everybody over, we'll do it. But we're not in trouble. And the false urgency that they're trying to convey is nothing we need to worry about. Smaller towns, you know, Sullivan with 600 people, this is probably really good advice. But for us, we have an infrastructure in place that I feel pretty good about.
And even beyond him and what his department does, you know, Peterborough got hit for $3 million. They got hit for $3 million because somebody didn't follow the process and protocols they had in place in their finance department. Our finance department has multiple steps to not to say that that couldn't happen, because I'll never say never, but they do have a process in place that prevents that kind of stuff, and this person didn't follow those steps. That's why they're no longer employed in Peterborough.
I actually took that $3 million.
So just
being
saying.
recorded, by the way.
All right,
So if you want me to proceed, I just need a name. You need to tell
Well,
me
you know,
what you wanna call
I
yourself.
used to be in the web business, and you know, it's always valuable to be the first one out there. If you could find a good name, now, you know, the shorter one, grab it. If it's not, then I wouldn't really worry
Go
about it.
ccnh.com if you want. Cheshire County NH.
No,
Go. Yeah,
talk about.
why not just something as simple as Cheshire County, New NH?
Yeah.
.gov.
I mean, that would be for the
That's-
user, that would be the
The
most
easiest.
logical.
Or just Cheshire NH.
If we could get Cheshire NH,
Cheshire NH, probably, yeah.
that would be, or just Cheshire.gov, if that's available, probably isn't, but.
Probably not.
But-
Los Angeles.gov is available. Dallas.gov is still available. We could get one of those.
LA is struggling right now.
They-
Yeah. Yeah, okay, so I don't know, I would not put it on your, you know, front burner.
So if you'd like, I'll maybe run a few names through, see what's available and send out an email and you guys can select.
We'll vote.
And I wanna thank you for your due diligence and clearing some things up.
Thank
you know,
you.
There's some
because,
interesting reading in that packet. If you have some leisure time, you can look
Oh,
through
yeah.
some of the compromises we
It's
deal with.
Very interesting.
And we'll see what we're up against.
There you go, it almost convinced
Was
me.
that sarcasm?
Yes, it was.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm gonna, come back so we can finish up the conversation, but what I wanted to read to you is something that is in the document and is, also something that we stand by, and that is, Cheshire County established Cheshire EMS under its authority to define in New Hampshire RSA 23:1. 23:1 powers as corporate body. Each county is a body corporate for the purpose of suing, being sued, purchasing, holding, conveying real and personal estate for county purposes, making all the necessary contract, and doing other acts relating to the property and the concerns of the county. That is something that we looked at. That's what the counties, that the commissioners at the time felt like this was something within the time frame. But also on top of that, Cheshire EMS is licensed by the New Hampshire Department of Safety Division in Fire Standards and Training Emergency Medical Services pursuant to the RSA A:10, and there's no provision in the statute for counties to be licensed ambulance providers. Cheshire EMS is also recognized as an ambulance provider by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. As such, we are able to bill for emergency and non-emergency ambulance services and have been provided to Medicare, and that have been provided to Medicare and Medicaid patients. And that the statement by the NHA's and National Association of Counties regarding the authority of New Hampshire counties to operate ambulance service that was quoted in the press has since been rescinded and corrected by NATO and is now, states all the information that. The one thing we can't do, we can't be a fire department.
What's the difference?
Somebody put language in there. So we can be an EMS provider, but we can be, in that, and my understanding is, but I will tell you, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, after I'm no longer in this position, do I think with the way things are going right now in our communities, that's going to be a question that's gonna be pressed on counties in New Hampshire as a whole? Yes. Did I have a conversation yesterday with the state senate, with a state, answering a state senator's question about Grafton County and some of the ambulance concerns that they're having up in their county? Yes. Did I also, a month ago, have a question, finish up a conversation in Merrimack County where they're having some real issues around the ambulances? Yes. And what we're being told, if you go into these meetings with the Southwest Fire Mutual, with all the fire chiefs there, they'll say, when are you guys looking at fire? And I'll say, I'm not. Okay, but it does allow us to do, interpret that we are able to. And if the New Hampshire wouldn't license us if they didn't think we could do it.
And you said that was RSA 23:1?
Yeah,
Thank you.
powers as a corporate body. And then, but also more importantly, is the second phase, that we're licensed by the New Hampshire Department of Safety Division and Fire Standards and Training Emergency Medical Services.
What are you reading from?
Deprecate.
No, that's from Don Bliss.
Maybe that forward it to them because it sounds like keep getting pressure.
Well, we keep getting like hijacked on this. What?
That's from MRI.
Yeah, it's something when we were going through the process, this is back in 2023. When, that we were trying to figure all this stuff out, and even prior to that, we were looking at this, but this is what we said, but I can send you this section right here.
That would be
I
very.
mean, that was
helpful.
one of the first things that.
Yeah.
That we looked at, it. Can
Well,
we do this?
there's so much
It-
misinformation historically running around out there and, nobody knows where to get information from. And, if people are using misquotes from a newspaper as information, then that just perpetuates the problem. But, for us to really be able to say that, the state of New Hampshire, X, Y, and Z, that's a leg to stand on. That's not just our opinion.
Are you finding as new commissioners, people are kind of,
Oh, throughout my campaign, people were like
yeah,
all over this, and they
Want-
still are. I had a heated
they
conversation.
want new ears,
What is that?
probably, yeah.
I had, exactly, people want new ears to hear that story,
Yeah,
and I
city
really got
can't-
hammered at a meeting last Tuesday around EMS.
The city king, George Hansel, did a wonderful PR job, a hatchet job against us. It is stuck. And now we're spending probably 5-10 years explaining this stuff.
Well, I also ask people, what do you have a solution for smaller towns who can't afford EMS service? What is your solution?
Well, and that's essentially, in my mind, when we were doing this, it became very clear to me really early that a holy shit, this is serious. This is an emergency. This stuff, somebody's gotta do this. What's gonna happen? I had a heart attack. What happens if I have another one and nobody comes? This is important. Somebody's gotta do this.
So what I'm gonna do to you, I'm gonna send some fact sheets that we put together too, just so you have it all. So you can use it, you can choose not to use
Thank
it,
you.
you can, and it's just stuff that, because a lot of this we put together because we were getting asked these questions.
Mhm.
And we answered them, and we answered them to Sentinel, we answered to anybody that would ask. And that's the bottom line, when we decided to go down this road, we knew there would be some level of pushback, but we never thought it would be to the level and the misinformation. I mean, we were personally attacked to the point where I had to think about hiring an attorney to actually write up a cease and desist order to some of these people that were taking my credibility, my character, and put it in question. And same for Terry, same for Jack and others. And we never had it. What people will never understand, there was never any agenda. There just wasn't an agenda. We didn't have on our radar, someday we want to be doing ambulance service. I will tell you, and I've said this before, I think I would have at least 5 sections of hair up here that would be still there, and I'd probably be
You did.
less white, and and it just, and the same thing goes with Cheryl, because we were in the midst of all of this every single day. Some weeks, it would take 60 to 80% of our job. That's what we were doing that week. We hired MRI to really help us through the process, because we had no understanding. We didn't want it. I mean, I think there was only really, and I've talked to Jack about it, there's only really one mistake that we had along the way. We had ongoing conversations with Keen through the whole process. But when we decided to take this last step and move forward and go on our own, it became overwhelming. You gotta remember, we're coming off COVID, we're still in COVID on some levels, we're dealing with all that. And some other things, connected families was really starting to ramp up, and we're doing this. And we're trying to find a home for it, we're trying to get construction done. So we didn't have the level of communication with the city team, and they actually said the same thing to us. That's where we fell short. We should have reached out to you. And it's just too bad, because I think when I say they, it's not many people, it's like 2 or 3 people that just kept this fire burning, and at times have continued to do so. It's too bad, because we love working, everybody loved working with us for they may have idiosyncrasies around certain things that they have concerns about, but we're doing the job, and the job that Mark and his crew has done down there. I mean, in a year's time, to develop the continuum of care, to have a guy walk into our facility and say, I'm not here today unless you're there. It's powerful in the work we're doing. We're still trying to figure out the financial end of it. We believe that we've come up with a budget in 2026. And you're still utilizing some level of, integrated delivery network monies that we're able to use. But over time, we want to see that we can continue to lessen that on that level. Just yesterday, Cheryl was talking to me about where our revenues are coming, our receipts are coming in. We're billing here, our receipts have been here.
Yeah.
But but we're edging up a little bit higher. We based the 2026 budget on $250,000. We're closer to $300,000. That's a $600,000 increase from what we projected. That's a good story. That's a good thing. That's where we need to be. We need to continue to do that. But a lot of that falls on the chief and the deputy chiefs and the captains and the team as a whole, getting that paperwork in, changing from Coastal, our prior billing agent, to EMAX, who's getting that out within 24 to 48 hours, and really pushing on getting those things into us. And if there's a concern, they get it to us so we can correct that. So we've done a lot of things to tighten all those things up. The service is spot on. I don't care what anybody says. I will tell you that it's as good as any service that's out there, probably better. And we're going to continue to do what we need to do. So
Yeah, it would,
Go ahead.
the so-called complaints from Harrisville to me were legitimate, but small.
I didn't think they rose to the level of getting us involved. I thought that they
But I
could
mean,
talk to Mark,
There,
you know?
I would expect some little issues, but they seem as though they can be solved quite easily.
Well, I actually think that the problem that I had with all that is a few days before, those issues were talked out. They were done with. They
And
we
I
got 'em
was-
in, the chief
I
wrote 'em
was
on.
unclear on if he had come and talked to Mark and he felt comfortable with Mark's response.
Right.
And he clearly did support what we were doing and Mark's and his team. Why did the board need to hear that
Yeah.
portion? I was unclear on, nothing new was resolved because Mark had worked it out with the chief, so I was unclear
I
on.
think it's probably, Andrew and Andrea needed to
Be comfortable.
be comfortable with the chief.
Okay.
You know, the chief
Yeah.
needed to know that you're
Yeah,
listening.
I agree with that, but I felt like the chief wasn't concerned with EMS anymore, that he had come in and had felt heard and that his issues were gonna be addressed.
I mean, Mark can talk to this, but Mark, I mean, you made it very clear to me that you felt like when he left your office,
Right,
we were good, we were moving forward.
that's
we
what
had a
I
plan.
heard.
And so to be on the call, on the carpet, and I will tell you, to be honest with you, I actually didn't agree that the complaints were anything. You know, some of this time, like the 40-minute thing, that he had one call, that was 2 years ago, before when we were just starting up and running, we were coming from Westmoreland. I mean, there's a litany there's always a story behind it, and he knows that, and he knew that in that meeting. That's what upset me, this whole thing about, developing a class. Yeah, the Chief Spain said because of the grant we had, we were gonna do this, this, and this.
Mhm.
We did that. It wasn't good on the standards that we did, so we canceled that. Mark was actually the trainer during, the chief and was training. He said, get your highest degree. During that same year, we started having that conversation because we weren't happy with what they did. And we'll do it in-house. Well, guess what? He got promoted up. The state took a long time to get that done. In the meantime, we've had some opportunities that we're looking at to see if we can do it a different way, but it's really not in the contract. If you read their contract, it's not in our contract, right? It was because we had a grant. We said we were gonna do this, this, and this, and that's what Chief Spain said. It's just everything they're saying, it's like, and can we just talk about, you had three issues, 3 runs that, maybe time-wise, but you had a whole bunch of runs where people were happy that they got the service delivered. And if we went a wrong way on a class 6 road, then you know what, you communicate that, the chief then communicates that to his troops. And that,
Well, wait a minute,
I've lived
wasn't
here
it-
all my life and I still can't find my way around Harrisville. I don't know. It's an
I
upside down
go
town.
until I get lost.
It's not gonna happen again, so. I mean,
Yeah.
Well, basically, right? Why would it?
Right,
And
something
so-
else will happen, but that won't happen again.
But it's just that if you've been, the problem is I have PTSD when it comes to the speed. Yeah, post-traumatic stress, around this. Because it's just like, we were getting hammered way back when, and to go in and have such small issues that were taken care of in his office.
Yeah.
And for us to have to sit there and just go, it's a little unnerving, I will tell you, but we got through it, we've got a plan, and we're moving forward.
And I think it mattered to them that we showed up as a community. They got somebody to listen to them, and I think that too is important.
Well, and we gotta go back at some point and talk about funding at some point, but they didn't wanna talk about that.
No, I know.
One question, do we need any kind of update on the Hemingway fund distribution?
We already talked
We
about
did.
it.
Well, I know that we talked about that we did,
Okay,
but I mean.
wait,
Oh, this was that we received our district 2020.
Right, okay, well, you're
know,
talking about
it's something-
2040, right?
right, but we can't talk about that.
Well, that's why I was asking if we
Oh, you
needed
mean,
an update.
oh, yeah,
That's all.
that's on my,
That was my opening.
Oh, I see.
yeah.
You get off that topic, I'm ready to move on.
My thought.
Yeah, let's move. Let's move.
That's all right, that's fine, and so that's where we're at, but there's a lot of information. I will try to get this stuff out to you today, but anytime you have any questions about this, we are so upfront about this stuff, we just don't have an agenda or, and I just can't ever thank Mark and his crew enough for the work they do every single day. Like, but if they're no different than any of the other departments we have, they all just do their work, they're dedicated to the county, so thank you. Mark, you have anything before you go?
Here you go.
Your mic, you're playing your mic again. No?
Nope.
Keep going.
Write it down on a card.
Love action. Put some music. Well, if you can find it, just jump in at some point. I'm gonna keep moving on, but if you have something to say. All right, that's really what I had, I know I've asked this a few times, but I'm gonna ask one more time. Yes and yes for DC,
Yes.
and then,
No,
okay, and then Primex. Yes and yes, and,
I want to say no at the moment.
okay.
So
And that-
which Primex? Because there's that training coming up on February 16th.
April 16th.
Yeah, that one too.
April 16th, we have a
Yes.
training, leadership training, but
Yes.
May is,
Mount
May
Washington,
14th or 15th.
yeah,
Yeah. yes, to both of those.
okay.
And
Alright.
that Primex, you'll have to hear from me one more time because it doesn't open until March.
Yeah, that's
anyway.
fine.
Yeah.
But DC, I'm
Does that
working
mean
on
we can't
flights.
get the hotel room until that day?
Yeah, we can't. The
Okay.
blocks aren't open until March this
Alright.
year. They were open much earlier last year. We got them in like
Yeah.
January, anyway. I'm working on plans for DC. I don't think we officially know what days the presentations will be.
Yeah, we're trying to figure it out because it starts on Friday and goes until we would fly home on Wednesday. So, but we don't have to stay that long, or we don't have to get there that early. It really depends on, when our times are, unless you want to go that long, and you can. So my thing is, I'm not gonna go down. It depends on everything for me, so it just,
Well, what useful information or meetings take place prior to our
we're
slot?
gonna get you we'll get you
Okay.
a packet.
Yeah.
By next
I
week.
mean, I don't need to travel if there's stupid stuff.
Yeah,
But I think
no,
we just
but
need to
that-
know.
actually look at it, it's actually, there is stuff, there's a lot of things every single day,
Yeah,
Like-
so,
Friday, February 28th isn't like fascinating, but it could be the day that we have to present.
Right.
The policy changes to
Yeah.
that. But the,
but then you have
Bulky
an
days
opening
are-
thing. And that's it, it's like,
yeah,
you mean where you have to have a lot of people contact?
yes, that would be Saturday, Sunday,
Those things make
Monday,
me
and
crazy.
then start slowing down on Tuesday, but. Oh, slowing down on Wednesday, there's barely anything on Wednesday. Tuesday is Capitol Hill Day, if you've heard of that before. Where you meet with your local Congress people mostly, and some others if they're around.
which is important. Because we need to be able to go in there, have them know our faces, because when we ask for money, they don't forget us, and the other thing is, I'm gonna see if I can set up some meetings with their staff.
Mm,
It's picture opportunity in 10 minutes with the official, but it's more about if I can set meetings up with others to talk about what we're trying to do so that they have a clear picture. So when they're talking about it with the senators or the congressman people, they understand why we're talking about what we're talking about.
Yeah, Maggie just had a session with the delegation. So. We need our turn.
Mhm. Yeah, we need to figure that one out yet. We have to quite figure that out.
Which one?
Contact? Who's Maggie's
Who's Maggie?
contact?
Oh,
Good luck.
I have one contact. I don't think it's her central one, but I have someone.
Okay, all right, so that's where we're at. And then the only other thing I have, I'm gonna go shoot through this. Is there any old business? Is there any new business?
Yeah, old business. Where are we at with our website
Um,
development?
So the It's tricky since there's so many pieces that have been added over the years, so finding someone that is equipped to take on. Multiple different systems and applications that are built into the website is just. Been difficult to find enough people to RFP for quite yet, but I think we should be. Good to get it done by the end of the month, I would assume.
Because we're essentially WordPress now, right?
Yes, and so that's just the issue. We have to find someone that can transfer everything over, so we don't have no lapse in service to the county, because there's so many important
Yeah.
forms and systems on the website that are all required by law too, so we need them going
Well, there's a lot of.
in tandem at the same time.
In back of the. There's a lot of stuff that isn't built to the general public. on.
Very much so,
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of the DOC, the sheriff, the nursing
Yeah,
home.
yeah.
So I've met with probably 4 or 5 different developers by now, and a couple of them could work.
Yeah, so I think that's not probably the area that we really need to even go. If only our public face could be developed, somehow to make it, a lot easier to navigate.
Yeah,
And then we wouldn't have to we could probably improve the back end, but I don't think that's an essential part of what we need to do.
the only issue is they are really tightly linked at the moment, so everything is done.
Yeah.
Basically on the same pages, it depends what's private to the public and what's not, so it would require. A lot of manpower to separate the two, but it's something I'm happy to look at.
So besides, Paragon, who else is in the area?
It's mostly out of area
Out of there?
folks. There's a couple in Manchester. I spoke to a good one in California.
About Communicators Group?
I was just about to say, the communicators group may be Jeff Whitcomb.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody that we want to talk to.
Yeah.
Yep, I reached out to him a little while ago, and we talked over email, but we haven't met yet. At least,
Okay, good, all right.
yeah, so I should have an update for you on that relatively soon.
For me, I just want it to be as easy accessible. And easy to find. I can't stand when I go onto a website and I can't find somebody's phone number that I want to call them or their email address. It's like, why? Why not put that there? Something easy, so.
And when you look up Cheshire County, Chris Coates, that should come up. It should be your name on the
But
website with your
it
phone
should have
number.
contact.
It should have a better way.
Yeah.
When you search on Google, it actually finds the website, which it doesn't do right now at all.
Well, as long as it's not in court records, that's good by me. All right, I'm gonna keep on going, new business. Seeing none, then I'm going to move on to consent agenda item, vote to accept the weekly manifest and minutes of January 8th, 2025.
Motion to accept.
All right, any comments, any changes? Seeing none, Commissioner Clark,
Yes,
Commissioner Stewart,
Yes,
Commissioner DiBernardo.
Yes,
All right. Calendars, any changes to calendar, any upcoming things that need to be aware of?
No, besides the meetings you already talked about, we all set?
Are the executive committee meetings on the calendar?
Online?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Yep, as of last week.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other general discussion? No, then I would ask that we move into non-public to just for RXA 91-A:3, matters which is discussed in public would likely affect the adversely the reputation of any person.
so moved.
For a second,
second,
all right, Commissioner Clark,
Yes,
Commissioner Stewart,
yes.
and Commissioner DiBernardo.
yes.
It's so hard not to say England. I don't know why, Wasmac doesn't come up. Do you have that saying?
we didn't send it to me. Yeah, we were,
Oh, yeah, I have the packet.
we went into non-public, made no decisions,
No
No
votes were
votes.
taken.
no votes were taken.
Okay. All right, so motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
All right, Commissioner
Yeah.
Clark, Commissioner Stewart,
Yes.
Commissioner DiBernardo. Yeah, we're done.